Welcome to Paranormal M. How's it going? I've had a pretty good day, and I'm really excited to be here sharing paranormal experiences from all around the world with you. Thank you so much for all your love and for sending in your own stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest updates. Now, pull the covers up tight, and let's dive in. Hey. I'm going to change a couple names and details because even now, this story makes me a little shaky to talk about. I'm Nina, I'm 27, and this happened with my now ex-husband. Let's call him Mark. Back then, I was pregnant with our first baby, about 7 months along, and we decided to do the whole baby moon thing, one last little trip before life got completely rearranged by a tiny human. Mark planned everything himself. Flights, hotel, dinner reservations. Our destination was Chicago. He was really proud of how taken care of I was going to be, and honestly, it felt nice at the time. All I had to do was pack some stretchy pants and show up. We checked into the Drake Hotel, which, if you've never been, is this really old, grand place right by the lake. Marble floors, big chandeliers, that kind of old money energy. He'd booked us a room on one of the higher floors. I think it was the 9th. That first day was actually lovely. We walked way more than a pregnant woman probably should. Along the lakefront, through a couple of museums, grabbed lunch at a little cafe. By the time we got back to the hotel after dinner, my feet were screaming, but my mood was great. Usually I don't sleep well in hotels. Different smells, weird noises in the hallway. But that night I was out. Like out. Pregnancy fatigue plus miles of walking will do that. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight coming in through the curtains, and Mark was already sitting in the chair by the window, just kind of staring out at the city. He looked off. I stretched and asked, "Hey, how'd you sleep?" And he goes quiet. After he says, very calmly, "Something weird happened last night." I'm thinking, okay, maybe a fire alarm, maybe drunk people in the hallway. So I ask, "What do you mean?" He keeps his eyes on the window and says, "A woman in a red dress came into our room." Immediately I'm like, "What?" He tells me that sometime in the middle of the night, he woke up and saw this woman standing near the end of our bed. She was wearing a long red dress, like something you'd wear to a fancy party. He said she didn't look ghostly or anything, just pale and sad and very real. According to him, she looked right at him and said, "You need to go up to the 10th floor." That's it. No explanation, just that. And then, he said, she turned and walked toward the door, but he never heard the door open or close. She was just gone. He told me he lay there, frozen, for the rest of the night. Didn't wake me up, didn't turn on the light, just stared at the door and waited for morning. At first, I kind of laughed it off. I'm like, "Babe, you were dreaming. Or maybe you saw me in my giant red maternity t-shirt and your brain tried to make it sexy." He didn't laugh. He just shook his head and said, "No, I was awake. She was right there." I remember feeling this tiny cold knot in my stomach, but I pushed it away. We had a full day planned, breakfast, some sightseeing, a nice dinner reservation that night, so I didn't really want to lean into creepy ghost encounter at 9 a.m. We went down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. It's that kind of place where the coffee is way too strong and everything echoes a little. Mark was poking at his eggs, still distracted, and I pulled out my phone to do some research, mostly to tease him. Just messing around, I typed into Google, "Drake Hotel Woman in Red Chicago." And immediately, my whole body went cold. There it was, page after page, all talking about the woman in red at the Drake Hotel. Back in the early 1920s, on New Year's Eve, there was this huge gala at the hotel. A young woman in a red dress was there with her fiancé. Sometime during the night, she discovered he was cheating on her. Different versions say she caught him with another woman or overheard something. Heartbroken and humiliated, she went upstairs and either jumped or fell from one of the upper floors. Some stories said the 10th floor specifically. Ever since, people have reported seeing a woman in a red dress at the Drake, in the hallways, reflected in mirrors, sometimes in their rooms. And one detail came up over and over again. People saying she tells them something about the 10th floor. I remember my hands actually shaking as I read. I turned the phone to Mark and said, "You need to read this." Watching the color drain out of his face as he scrolled. I still see that. He kept saying, "No way, no way." But the thing is, he'd never heard that legend before. Neither had I. We didn't choose the Drake because of some ghost story. We chose it because it looked fancy and he got a good deal. After that, the vibe of the whole trip changed. I tried to act normal, but I was on edge the rest of the weekend. Every creak of the building, every shadow in the hallway felt loaded. I avoided looking too long at mirrors. I didn't want to be alone in the room. That night, when we got back from dinner, he made a joke like, "Should we go to the 10th floor?" And I snapped, "Absolutely not." I was half kidding, but also not at all. We didn't change rooms. We didn't complain to the front desk. What would we even say? "Hi, my husband saw your resident ghost last night. Can we get a discount?" No. We just kind of lived with it for the rest of the trip. I barely slept after that. He said he didn't see her again, but he kept waking up to check. And every time he moved, I woke up too. We went home, life kept moving, the baby came, and on the surface, the whole woman in red thing became just this bizarre story we almost never mentioned. But privately, I kept thinking about it. Not just the ghost part, but the part where she was supposedly betrayed right after getting engaged, right after this huge, happy moment. Because over time, slowly at first and then all at once, Mark showed me who he really was. Controlling. Cruel in this quiet, calculated way. There were lies, secrets, things I don't really want to get into detail about, but let's just say vile is the word that still comes to mind. When our marriage finally fell apart, I found myself thinking back to that woman in the red dress, to that strange night in Chicago. Sometimes I wonder, did he really see her? Was it just a dream that happened to line up with an old ghost story? Or, this is the part that still sends a chill down my spine, was she trying to warn me? Like, here I was, pregnant and hopeful, thinking we were on this sweet little baby moon, and someone, walks into our room and points him toward the 10th floor, toward her story. I don't pretend to know how any of this works. Maybe it was all coincidence. Maybe his brain just cooked up something spooky and Google did the rest. But every time I see a photo of the Drake, or someone mentions Chicago, or I catch a glimpse of a red dress in a shop window, I feel that same little knot of cold in my stomach. I don't talk to Mark anymore. I'm raising my kid on my own, and we're okay. Better than okay, honestly. Safe. Still, sometimes late at night, I think about that woman. How she might have felt on the night her life spun apart. How she's still, maybe, wandering those hallways in red. Hey, something's not right here. Pay attention. So, let me tell you this the way it lives in my family's memory. It all started around 200 years ago, in a small, quiet village where the cremation ground sat right at the edge of the fields. People said that place was haunted. Even in broad daylight, nobody liked walking past it alone. To keep the spirits in check, the villagers built a small temple near the pyres. It wasn't grand at all, just a simple stone shrine, but they dedicated it to a fierce form of the goddess Kali, the one who keeps restless spirits under control. A few days after the shrine was built, the king who ruled that land back then, Raja Devendra, had a strange dream. In it, he saw an ugly, twisted spirit roaming near that very cremation ground, right beside the new temple. When he woke up, he couldn't shake it off. He asked his courtiers, "Has anything new been built near the cremation ground?" One of them told him about the small temple the villagers had just put up. For reasons only he and the goddess might know, the king decided to go there himself. He went without guards, without fanfare, and stayed until the sky turned orange with evening. Just as he was about to leave, something struck. According to the story, an evil spirit attacked him. He felt a sharp, invisible blow, fell to the ground, and lost consciousness. While he was lying there, he had another dream. This one was different. He saw a woman in a red sari, her hair loose, her eyes both terrifying and gentle at the same time. She stood in front of the small shrine and said to him, very clearly, "Establish this temple properly. Find a capable priest who will take care of it with devotion. Then I will protect this land." That priest, we say, was my great-great-great-grandfather, Narayan Shastri. When the king woke up, he took the dream seriously. He ordered the temple to be rebuilt properly, with rituals and all the traditional rules. He called for Narayan Shastri, recognized him as the chosen priest, and granted him land, gold, and silver. There was one condition. His family must take care of the temple for generations. The temple was dedicated to Masani Chandi, a fierce form of Kali. Masani refers to the cremation ground. Chandi means a wrathful goddess, a powerful form of Kali who has influence over the afterlife and fate. My ancestor accepted the responsibility. He served the goddess with full devotion. For a while, everything went well. The family prospered, the temple flourished, and the village was peaceful. But as the generations passed, my family slowly drifted away from her. They stopped paying attention to the temple and became more interested in being landlords, managing their land and wealth instead. The temple became secondary, then an afterthought, and eventually almost abandoned by them. And then, misfortune began to fall on them, bit by bit. Land deals failed. Crops were ruined. Gold and silver were sold off to cover debts. Over a few generations, everything they had been given was lost. It didn't happen in a single dramatic moment, just a slow, painful decline until nothing was left. Finally, a few decades before I was born, someone in the family realized what had happened. We turned our backs on the goddess who protected us. By then, the temple had been moved and rebuilt several times. My elders say 4 or 5, they've lost count. But they returned. They went back to Masani Chandi, performed the proper rituals, and asked for forgiveness. They prayed, "Please protect us again. We were foolish. We forgot you. Take us back." Now, this temple is not a typical sacrifice temple. It's not like animals are being offered all the time. But because Masani Chandi is a form of Kali, a small, limited amount of sacrifice is traditionally allowed. We offer the goat, cook it as a curry, and the family eats it. Whatever is left, bones, remains, scraps, is taken and cremated, returned to the fire of the cremation ground. The priest who serves there now, Pandit Raghav, doesn't eat meat at all. He won't touch the curry. That's his personal vow. Whenever I visit during that time, I can smell it, the anticipation of the sacrifice, even before the goat is brought in. But once I step inside the inner part of the temple, everything changes. There's no smell of incense, no smell of flowers, nothing. Inside, for me, there is only the smell of petrichor, that damp, earthy scent, as if it has just rained on dry soil, even when the day outside is hot and dry. It's the only thing I can smell inside that sanctum. It feels like the earth itself is breathing. That's my father's side. Now, from my mother's side, the connection is strangely similar. By sheer coincidence, or maybe fate, my mother's family is also tied to the same goddess, Masani Chandi. But unlike the small village shrine of my father's side, my mother's side is connected to a very well-known temple. If you look it up on Google, you'll find it under the name Swarga Dwar, which means Heaven's Gate. It's a large cremation ground with a big temple of Masani Chandi inside it. The place is busy, famous, and spiritually important for many people, not just our family. My mother's grandmother, whom we called Lakshmi Amma, was closely associated with that temple. People say she had a gift. She could ward off evil spirits and help heal illnesses using a special chant taught to her in a dream. Neighbors would come to her with strange problems, nightmares, sudden fevers, unexplained fear, and she would softly chant that mantra over a glass of water or over their heads, and they would feel lighter. She lived to be almost 100 years old. I actually met her several times when I was very young, though I only have fragment-like memories. Her thin hands, her gray hair tied back, the way her eyes seemed to be looking at something far beyond the room. When I was a baby, my mother's family performed a ritual for me at Swargadwar. In that ritual, they sold me to the goddess, or, more gently put, they offered me to her. It doesn't mean the goddess literally adopted me and took me away, of course. It's more symbolic. Through that ritual, they were saying, "This child is yours now. Her fate, her protection, her path, please look after her." So in a strange, comforting way, I've grown up with the idea that I belong to Masani Chandi, from both sides of my family. My father's side, who once neglected her temple and suffered for it, then came back in humility and gratitude. My mother's side, whose matriarch walked with her so closely she could chase away spirits with a chant. And me, somewhere in the middle, offered to the same goddess who rules over the cremation ground, over fate, over the thin line between this world and whatever comes after. When I stand in that temple and breathe in that impossible smell of rain on dry earth, I always feel the same quiet thought in my heart. I'm still yours. Don't forget me. All right, I'm just gonna say it straight out. I think I'm lucky. But not like win the lottery and move to a private island lucky. It's this really weird, super specific kind of luck that only shows up when things are bad and I genuinely have no other options. And honestly, I don't even know if luck is the right word. Sometimes it feels like something else, wearing a luck costume. My wife, Mia, she's the one who really noticed it. I think it's been happening my whole life, but she started pointing it out a few years back. Out of the thousands of little things, I'll just start with the moment she went from, "Huh, that's weird," to, "Okay, this is freaking me out." So this was about 5 years ago, right before Christmas. We had this roommate, Jenna, who just bailed. Stopped paying her half of the rent and utilities, ghosted us completely. And we weren't exactly rolling in cash. We were very much living paycheck to paycheck, so suddenly we're short on rent and trying to figure out how to afford Christmas for the kids and a little something for family. You know that kind of stress where your chest just feels tight all the time? That was us. A few days later, I'm on the way home from work and I stop for gas. I'm standing there by the pump, just staring at the numbers going up and mentally calculating how many instant noodles we can buy. And I see this crumpled $5 bill on the ground by the door to the little gas station shop. I pick it up. I look around. No one's nearby. Nobody's freaking out about losing money. I go inside, hand it to the cashier, and say, "Hey, someone dropped this." She barely glances at it and goes, "If nobody claims it by the end of the shift, it's yours." I'm like, Okay, whatever. And I just wander around the store for a couple minutes, mostly killing time. They've got those little video lottery machines in the back. I have never been a big gambler. I mean, with our budget, we're counting dimes, not throwing them into machines. But I've got literally nothing else to do, and for some reason, I just feel like drawn to it. A few minutes pass, nobody comes in looking for the 5. The cashier nods at me like, yeah, go ahead. So I take the 5, sit down at the machine, and I tell myself, look, we're already screwed. This isn't rent money. Worst case, I lose it and nothing changes. Best case, who knows? I put in the 5, hit spin. 1 spin. Boom. I win $1,200. I just sit there staring at the screen, completely frozen. The cashier, that same day at work, a customer I barely interacted with leaves a tip, cash, for me. $100. I work a job where tips like that just do not happen. I had never gotten a tip like that before, and I haven't since. It covered exactly the gap we had for groceries, and then some. Then there were the big ones. Twice, we fell behind on the mortgage to the point where we were terrified of losing the house. The first time, I'm panicking, trying to figure out if we need to start packing or what. And then I get this notice about a disability payment adjustment, some error from way back that they were correcting. Back pay. Enough to catch us up before it was too late. The second time, different situation, same pattern. We're behind again. I'm having that sick feeling in my stomach every morning. And then I get a letter saying my disability amount is being increased and they're backdating the difference. Again, just enough to pull us out of the fire. That's the pattern. That's the weird part. It is always just enough. Never extravagant. Never congratulations, you're rich now, go buy a boat. It's always just enough to cover the immediate need. And here's the other side of it. If I ever tried to push it, to lean on it, to treat it like some kind of cheat code, it backfired. If I tried to stretch that money into something greedy, or I started thinking, hey, maybe I can game this, maybe I can get more out of it, something would happen. The car would break down, something valuable would get stolen, an unexpected bill would show up. It was like being smacked on the nose with a newspaper. I remember one time, after one of these miracle moments, I got a little cocky. I thought, well, hey, maybe this is my thing. Maybe I should go play those machines again. Maybe I can double it. Went back a few days later, tried again with my own money this time. Lost it instantly. Not long after, something expensive in the house broke. Our washing machine just died. Whatever little extra cushion we thought we had, gone. It felt like being punished for trying to turn just enough into more than enough. It got to the point where, whenever we were in a bad spot, I'd tell Mia, half joking and half serious, why are you stressing? You know how this goes. I've got the shine. It'll work out. And the messed up thing is, it always did. I could keep going with stories like that forever, honestly. There's a whole other category of this from when I was deployed. I was in a war zone, and there were a couple times where, by all logic, I absolutely should not be here talking to you right now. Once, a mortar shell landed literally a few feet away from me. Didn't explode. Everybody hit the ground. People were shouting, waiting for the worst. And nothing. Just this horrible, heavy silence. We were all shaken, but I walked away without a scratch. Another time, our vehicle hit a grenade round near the back tire. Everyone in the back got peppered with shrapnel. Not all of it was serious, but still, bloody, screaming, chaos. Me? Sitting in the same vehicle, same blast, I walked away completely untouched. It's hard to explain what that feels like. On paper, yeah, you could say, Well, sometimes people get lucky, but when you stack that on top of all the other times, it starts to feel, I don't know, targeted, intentional, like something keeps stepping in at the last possible moment and going, not him, not yet. But then Mia started saying things like, this isn't normal, this actually scares me. And once she said that, I couldn't unsee it. So now I think about it a lot, probably more than is healthy. I've tried looking it up. I've searched for explanations, everything from spiritual stuff to weird probability theories. The only things I ever find are either religious language that doesn't quite sit right with me, or fiction that feels a little too close to home. And yeah, sure, if this kind of thing happened once in a while, you'd shrug and say, life's weird. Most people do have a few stories like that. But for me, it's constant. Over and over and over, in different places, at different times in my life. Same pattern. Things get genuinely dire. There is no practical way out. Something unlikely happens. We get just enough to be okay. Not more, never less, just enough. So that's where I'm at. I'm not here to say I have powers or anything dramatic like that. I'm just a guy who's noticed this pattern, and it's gotten too loud to ignore. And yeah, it scares my wife. Sometimes it scares me too, because if something can step in and help, whatever it is, it could also stop. And I don't know what happens then. Anyway, that's my story. That's my just enough luck, I guess. Make of it what you will. So, I'm going to tell you about the one night in my life that still gives me chills when I think about it. This happened a little over 10 years ago, when I was about 16. I was living in this old council terrace, kind of squeezed between two other houses. It was just a normal school night. My Aunt Rena was working late, my little brother was staying at a friend's house, so it was just me and my dog Daisy at home. It was pretty late, maybe around 11. I was in the living room, lights off except for the TV and the warm glow from the hallway light. You know that cozy, half-asleep vibe? That's where I was. Daisy was wandering around the house doing her usual checks. She was a really calm dog, the kind that hardly ever barked, let alone growled. After a while, I realized it had gone really quiet. I couldn't hear Daisy's collar jingling. Then I heard this low, rumbling growl. At first I thought it was the TV, but it kept going. It was coming from the top of the stairs. I muted the TV and just sat there for a second, listening. The growl got deeper. I'd never heard her make that sound before, ever. So I got up, a bit annoyed at first, like, "What are you doing, Daisy?" But the closer I got to the stairs, the more I could feel my body tensing up. When I reached the top, Daisy was standing completely rigid on the landing, facing the staircase. All the fur along her back was standing straight up. Her teeth were showing, and she was staring down the stairs like there was something there that terrified her. I followed her gaze down into the dark. The light from the hallway only went so far, so the bottom of the stairs and the area beyond were kind of swallowed in shadow. And that's when I saw it. It looked like a person-shaped shadow, but wrong. Not like someone actually standing there, more like a patch of darkness that was darker than it should have been, shaped like a person but sort of blurred at the edges, almost like the air was warped around it. I remember blinking, trying to make sense of it, thinking, is that a coat on the banister? Am I just seeing things? I had maybe 2-3 seconds to process it. And then everything went black. Every light in the house cut out at the same time. The hallway, the TV, everything. No flicker, no fading, just gone. Pitch black. I stumbled back and grabbed onto the wall, completely disoriented. And as my eyes tried to adjust, I started seeing these flashes, like faces. Not clear ones, not like you'd recognize a person, but impressions of faces, right in front of my eyes. Almost like when you stare at a light bulb and then close your eyes, and you see weird shapes. Except these felt more detailed, more intentional. Some looked angry, some just blank. I know how that sounds. Maybe it was the panic, the sudden darkness, my brain trying to fill in the gaps. But in that moment, it didn't feel imaginary at all. It felt right there. Daisy started barking, this frantic, high-pitched bark that I'd never heard from her. She bolted past me and ran into my bedroom, which was just off the landing. Instinctively, I followed her. I slammed the bedroom door shut behind us, even though I couldn't see anything. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I felt my way over to the light switch and flicked it on and off a few times. Nothing. The house was completely dead. No hum from the TV, no glow from the router, nothing. Now, in my room, directly across from my bed, I had this full-length mirror. It wasn't leaning. It was properly fixed to the wall with brackets. It had been there for years and never moved, never rattled, nothing. I was lying there in the dark, clutching my dog, breathing way too fast, trying not to cry. I remember whispering to her like she could understand me. "It's okay. It's okay. It's okay." And then, out of nowhere, the mirror came off the wall. I didn't hear the brackets creak or anything. It was just this sudden, violent force from behind me, like someone had shoved a door into my back. The mirror slammed into me and then crashed down, shattering all over the floor. Glass went everywhere. For a second, I couldn't even process what happened. My back was stinging where the frame had hit me, and I could hear pieces of glass still clinking as they settled. Daisy jumped off the bed and started whining, pacing back and forth, but she wouldn't go near the area where the mirror had fallen. That was the point where I just lost it. I grabbed Daisy, didn't even think about shoes or anything, and ran. I yanked the bedroom door open, ran down the still dark stairs as fast as I could without falling, and burst out into the back garden. I remember the air outside feeling too normal. Cool, calm, night sounds, a couple of distant cars. Like the world carried on completely unaware that I'd just had the worst scare of my life. My hands were shaking so much it took me a couple of tries to unlock my phone. I called my Aunt Rena and basically broke down as soon as she answered. She kept asking, "Are you outside? Are you safe? Is anyone in the house?" And I just kept saying, I don't know, something's wrong with the lights, something's in the house." She told me to stay in the garden with Daisy and wait for her. So that's what I did. I sat on the step, holding Daisy close, watching the house like I expected something to look out of the upstairs window. When Rena finally pulled up, she came through the gate, saw my face, and her whole expression changed. She put an arm around me, asked if I'd seen an intruder or heard anyone. I tried to explain the shadow, the power going out, the mirror, but the words felt ridiculous coming out of my mouth. She went inside first to check everything, telling me to wait. I stood by the back door, ready to bolt if she screamed. I watched her silhouette move down the hallway. She reached for the switch, and the hallway lights came on. Just like that. Perfectly bright. No flickering, no delay. The TV turned on. The Wi-Fi lights were blinking. The bedroom lamp worked when she tried it. Everything in the house was suddenly fine, like nothing had ever happened, except for the smashed mirror all over my bedroom floor. We cleaned it up together later, silently, both of us a bit unsettled. She tried to make rational suggestions. Maybe the power had tripped and come back on. Maybe the mirror had been loose and just finally given way. But even she couldn't really explain how it flew far enough to slam into my back the way it did. Now, here's the part I didn't mention for years, because I just brushed it off at the time. When we lived in that house, I used to wake up with random scratches on my arms, shoulders, sometimes my legs. Not just tiny little ones either. Sometimes they were long, like I'd scraped myself on something. I always assumed I was doing it in my sleep, or maybe the bed frame had a rough edge. It was weird, but I didn't really think too hard about it. But it only ever happened in that house. After we moved, it just stopped. Completely. Because it was an old terrace, I always told myself it was the neighbors. Thin walls, shared structures, you know? Old houses creak, pipes bang, people make noise. That's just life. But after that night, the shadow on the stairs, the blackout, the faces in the dark, the mirror smashing into my back, it all started to feel like pieces of a bigger, much more unsettling picture. I've tried so hard to rationalize it over the years. Maybe it was a power surge. Maybe the fear and adrenaline made me misremember details. Maybe the mirror was loose and the timing was just horrible. Maybe the faces were just my imagination in full panic mode. But every time I replay it in my head, I still feel that same cold, sinking dread in my stomach. The way Daisy growled at something I couldn't see. The absolute wrongness of that shadow at the bottom of the stairs. The weight of that mirror hitting my back like it had been thrown. I don't know what happened that night. I'm not here to say it was definitely a ghost, or the house was haunted, or anything like that. All I know is, it felt like something in that house really, really didn't want us there. And even now, all these years later, I can remember every second of it like it just happened yesterday. So, this happened really early this morning, and I still feel a little weird talking about it. I woke up around 3 in the morning, maybe a little after, like 3:10 or so. I live in this old apartment building, the kind with creaky floors and really thin walls, and my neighbors were being loud. Doors closing, muffled voices, someone dragging furniture for some reason. It took a while for things to calm down, but eventually the noise faded and the building got quiet again. I rolled over, trying to get comfortable, and I slipped into that in-between place where you're not quite awake, but not fully asleep either. You know that floaty feeling? Your thoughts start turning into dreams, but there's still this little part of you that knows, I'm not asleep yet. That's where I was. I was kind of half dreaming that I was on my phone, scrolling around and trying to find this video I wanted to watch. I could feel the weight of the phone in my hand, but at the same time I knew I was lying in bed, in my room, and that none of it was actually happening. It's something that happens to me sometimes. I'll start dreaming before I'm fully asleep, but I'm still aware that it's a dream. And then, out of absolutely nowhere, I felt hands on my face. 2 hands came in from behind my head and settled on my cheeks. They started moving slowly, rubbing up and down along my face. I could feel everything, every curve of the fingers, the palms sliding over my skin, the way my cheeks kind of squished and moved with the pressure. The hands felt cold and a little rough, like they belonged to someone who worked with them a lot. The fingers felt thick and solid, not delicate at all. They weren't squeezing or hurting me. It was actually a really gentle touch, but it was so clear and detailed that it instantly snapped me out of that dreamy, scrolling scene. My first thought, honestly, was that it was my partner, Daniel. He has a key to my place, and sometimes he'll come over super early if he can't sleep. So for a second, I just assumed he'd let himself in and was messing with me, like trying to freak me out in my sleep. The weird part is that in the moment, I didn't panic. I was confused, but I wasn't instantly terrified. I remember thinking, okay, it's probably just him. Who else would it be? The hands even kind of felt like his, big and a little rough. so I tried to reach up and feel who it was. I brought my own hand up toward my cheek, trying to touch their hand, to feel an arm or a sleeve or something that would tell me, yeah, it's definitely Daniel. But when I tried to move, I couldn't. My body just wouldn't respond. I could move a tiny bit, just enough to feel my own fingers brushing one side of my face, but that was it. It was like I was stuck inside my own body. I tried to turn my head to look, to see who was behind me, but my neck wouldn't move. Everything felt heavy and pinned in place. I managed to get my eyes open just a sliver. The room was almost completely dark, just a little bit of light coming in from the street through the curtains. I could see vague shapes, shadows in the corners, but no clear outline of a person. No silhouette leaning over me. Nothing that made sense with the feeling of those hands on my face. And that was the moment it really hit me. Daniel wasn't there. He hadn't texted me that he was coming over. I hadn't heard my door, and there was no shape, no body, nothing I could see that matched what I was feeling. There was no one in the room. That's when the fear hit. Not a screaming, dramatic fear, but that cold, shaky feeling that creeps over you when you know something was off. I just lay there for a while, staring into the dark, trying to process what happened. The strange thing is, in the moment when it was actually happening, I wasn't scared. I didn't feel like I was being attacked. My breathing wasn't weird. My heart wasn't pounding. I was weirdly calm. The touch was gentle, almost careful. It's only afterward, once my brain started trying to make sense of it, that I got freaked out. Because it felt so real. Too real. And this isn't the first time something like this has happened to me. A few years ago, when my mom was renting this little house in a different town, I had two really intense experiences there. That house always felt heavy to me, like the air was thick, especially at night. The first time, I woke up to this crushing pressure on my chest. It felt like something was pushing me straight down into the mattress, like I'd suddenly become twice as heavy. I couldn't move, and I couldn't get a full breath in. I didn't see anything, didn't feel hands or a body, just that weight, like an invisible boulder pinning me down. That one scared me a lot. The second time in that same house, I was dreaming that something, some kind of presence, I guess, was trying to pull me out of bed by my left arm and leg. In the dream, I could feel it grabbing me, tugging, trying to drag me off the mattress. And when I jolted awake, my arm and leg were actually stretched out off the side of the bed, like I'd already been halfway pulled over. That scared me even more, because it wasn't just in my head anymore. My body had literally moved into the position from the dream. Those two experiences were really intense and really frightening. I remember waking up shaking, heart racing, and not wanting to go back to sleep afterward. There's another story too, but this one I don't remember myself. I was too little. My mom has told it to me more than once though, and it always gives me chills. When I was a baby, we lived in this really old house. My dad would be at work during the day, so it would just be me and my mom at home. She'd put me down for a nap upstairs with the baby monitor on, and then go back down to the kitchen or living room. Every so often, she said she would hear a woman's voice coming through the monitor. Not talking, but singing. Softly, like a lullaby. Like someone was leaning over my crib and singing to me. My mom said that whenever this happened, instead of calming down like you'd expect a baby to do when someone's singing, I would start screaming. Full-on, terrified crying. It happened enough times that she still remembers it really clearly. She was convinced there was no TV on, no radio, no neighbor that close. Just her, me, and this voice. So I'm aware that a lot of what I've described, waking up unable to move, feeling pressure, seeing shadows, that kind of thing, lines up with classic sleep paralysis. I've read about it, I know what people say, but for me, it doesn't happen very often, And it's interesting that the few times it has happened were only in certain places. That rented house, this old apartment. I also can't help thinking about that baby monitor story, about someone singing to me when I was too young to understand what was going on. Between that, the pressure on my chest, the feeling of being pulled, and now these cold hands on my cheeks while I'm half awake, it makes me wonder if I'm just more sensitive to something. Whether that something is just my brain doing strange things during sleep, or energies we don't fully understand, I honestly don't know. What I do know is that what happened this morning felt incredibly real. The texture of the skin, the temperature of the hands, the way my cheeks moved with their touch. That level of detail is what shook me the most. And the fact that I wasn't fully asleep yet when it started, that I was aware of my room, my body, my thoughts. It all makes it harder for me to just shrug it off. I'm not saying I have all the answers, I don't. Part of me leans toward the explanation of sleep paralysis because it fits in a lot of ways. Another part of me, the part that believes there are things we can't always see or measure, wonders if there's more to it. Either way, it left me lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling of this old apartment, feeling that mix of curiosity and fear that keeps you awake long after the experience is over. Just replaying those cold, careful hands on my face and asking myself, what was that? So, I'll start by saying this. I really do believe there's more out there than what we can see. Not in a dramatic, movie kind of way, just logically. It feels totally possible there are things we don't understand yet. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. My boyfriend, well, let's call him Leo, and his family are the same. They've all had experiences they'd describe as paranormal. I'm still trying to decide how I feel about it all, but I've heard enough from them that I don't just brush it off. I even suggested burning sage at one point, just to clear the energy a bit, but I want to understand what we're dealing with before I go in there waving smoke around like a DIY exorcist. So Leo's house isn't super old. It's not one of those creepy Victorian mansions. It's a 3-story place in a neighborhood that's been around since maybe the 60s. The unsettling part is more about where it's located, right beside the rail line, near a station where, unfortunately, a lot of people have ended their lives. There's just this heaviness in the area, even during the day. It's like the air remembers. Inside the house, Leo's room is directly above his mom's room. Well, his mom, Anna. Both rooms have this little nook in the same spot. If you stack the rooms on top of each other in your mind, the nooks line up perfectly, one right above the other. During the day, it's just a weird little architectural quirk. At night, it's something else. Both of them say they feel watched from those nooks. One night, Leo was lying in bed, his back to the room, and he said he could feel it. You know that prickly feeling when someone's staring at you? He said it felt like something tall was standing in the nook, just looking at him, not moving, just there. He didn't see it directly, but he said his whole body went tense, like his instincts were shouting at him that something was wrong. He didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, he went downstairs to tell his mom what had happened. He didn't even get to finish his sentence. As soon as he started with, "Something weird happened last night," she cut him off and said, "In the nook?" And then she told him that she'd felt the exact same thing, like something tall was standing in the corner of her nook, just watching her. She was so unsettled she'd ended up sleeping with the lamp on. She's told me other things too. Sometimes she sees these dark, shadowy shapes in the doorway, like someone's leaning in to look but never actually coming into the room. Other times, she hears the sound of people running up and down the stairs or across the hallway when she knows she's home alone. No TV, no radio, no neighbors that close. just that hollow thudding of footsteps in a house that should be quiet. There was another night, pretty late, after we'd had a few people over. Everyone had left, and I'd already gone upstairs. Leo stayed down in the kitchen to clean up. His kitchen faces the bottom of the stairs, so if you stand at the sink, you can see the hallway and the stairway pretty clearly. He told me he suddenly got that familiar feeling again, like someone was watching him. Not just, oh, I'm being paranoid, but that heavy, very present feeling, like when you know someone's eyes are on you. He turned around to look at the stairs and said it felt like he was making eye contact with something halfway up. The weird part is, there was nothing there. No shadow, no person, nothing you could point at and say, that's what I saw. Just this intense sensation of locking eyes with something that wasn't physically visible. He ended up finishing the dishes with his back pressed against the sink, facing the room so he didn't have to turn around again. He said he only went upstairs once that feeling finally faded. Until then, he just didn't feel safe. And here's the thing, they've only lived in that house for, about 2 years now? And these are just the stories I remember them telling me in passing, over tea or while we're sitting on the sofa. It's not like they're trying to scare me. If anything, they're almost casual about it, which somehow makes it creepier. It doesn't stop at that house either. His grandparents' place is similar. Different building, same kind of energy. People have said they've felt hands on their backs when they're going down the stairs, like a shove or a sudden yank, just enough to throw them off balance. One of Leo's cousins apparently slipped because of it, and she swears something pulled at her ankle. There are also stories about people seeing someone waving from the upstairs window when the house is supposed to be empty. Neighbors will mention it like, "Oh, who was visiting you earlier?" And his grandparents will say, "No one was here." That kind of thing. I'll be honest with you. Part of me is curious, part of me is scared, and part of me just wants everyone to be okay. I don't know if whatever's there is truly malicious or just stuck or trying to be noticed. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I just know that the people I love feel watched in their own home, and that doesn't sit right with me. So I keep listening. I keep paying attention to the patterns. I keep 1 foot in belief and 1 foot in, maybe there's a logical explanation, while I figure out what feels right. And if we do end up lighting that sage and saying a few kind words into those dark little nooks, it won't be from a place of fear. It'll be from a place of wanting everyone, living or otherwise, to find a bit of peace. So, earlier this year, late August actually, my grandpa, we called him Lolo Ben, passed away in our family's home. He'd been on hospice for a while because his health had gone downhill really fast. Before that, he was in and out of the hospital, and every time he came home, he seemed just a little bit smaller, a little more tired, you know? About 5 weeks after he passed, my Aunt Rosa, who had Down syndrome, also passed away. She'd bounced between the hospital and a nursing home for months. Eventually, the doctors told us she wasn't improving and that hospice would be the kindest option. The really heartbreaking part is that the same evening they settled her into the hospice facility, she was gone. Just like that. When my grandpa was still with us, he had this little routine he loved. He'd shuffle over with his walker and park himself right by our front door, facing the big old tree in the yard. He loved that tree. Said it made him feel like he was sitting in front of a green ocean. My mom bought 2 wooden rocking chairs for the porch, one for him and one for her, so they could sit out there together. Most mornings you'd find them there, the 2 of them, sipping coffee, talking softly, or just sitting in comfortable silence while the neighborhood slowly woke up. He looked so peaceful out there. That spot became his spot. So fast forward to after both he and my aunt passed. It was maybe a month and a half later. I was up way too late one night, around 1:40 a.m., sitting in the living room, scrolling on my phone like a zombie. From where I was sitting on the couch, you can see the front door, and next to the door there's this tall glass panel window. It's not totally clear. You can't see every detail, but you can definitely make out shapes and movement. One of the things you can see from there is my grandpa's old rocking chair. I'm just sitting there, barely paying attention to anything, when something moves at the edge of my vision. You know that little flicker that makes your brain go, "Wait, what was that?" So I look up, and the rocking chair is moving. Not just a tiny little wobble either. It was rocking. My first thought was, okay, it's gotta be the wind. Calm down. I didn't want to jump straight to ghost or anything, so I sat there for a second, just watching. The air felt totally still. Our curtains weren't moving. Nothing else was shifting or rattling. I grabbed my phone and started recording from where I was on the couch. You can see it clearly in the video. The chair is moving in this weird, uneven way. It would rock normally for a bit, and then suddenly slow down and almost sink back, like someone was leaning their full weight into it. And then it'd pick up again. It didn't feel like a random breeze. When it finally stopped, I checked the weather app right away. No wind. Not even a light breeze reported at that time. I just remember sitting there with this heavy, weird feeling in my chest, like I'd walked in on a private moment that wasn't meant for me. And that's not the only thing that's happened. Before I started sitting in that particular spot on the couch, I used to stay up late at the opposite end, still in the living room, but without a view of the front door. I'd usually be on my iPad, playing Roblox with friends or just mindlessly scrolling. Almost every night, I'd get this feeling that someone was watching me. I know, a lot of people say that. The whole, "I felt like someone was watching me" thing. But this, it didn't feel like some random creepy vibe. It felt familiar. Like when someone you love is standing behind you and you can sense them before you actually see them. It reminded me so much of my Aunt Rosa. She was always so curious about what you were doing. If you were on your phone or drawing or cooking, she'd stand nearby, quietly watching with this focused little look on her face. But the second you turned and actually looked at her, she'd get all shy, pretend she wasn't interested, maybe fiddle with her shirt or look away like, "What? I wasn't doing anything." That's exactly what the energy felt like. Curious, but shy. Loving, not threatening. There was one night that really stuck with me. It was super late, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m. I was on my iPad again, all the lights off except the glow from the screen, and that familiar feeling of being watched was really strong. I'm staring down at my game, and suddenly, in my peripheral vision, it looks like someone walks out from the hallway, passes in front of the fireplace, and then suddenly turns and darts back down the hall. It was quick, like someone changed their mind halfway through walking into the room. My immediate thought was, okay, that had to be Mom or Dad. But my parents get up early, like 5 or 6 a.m. Early, but not that early. So when they finally woke up and were in the kitchen making coffee, I asked them, "Hey, did either of you get up around 3 or 4 and walk into the living room? Like, near the fireplace?" They both looked at me and said, no. They'd been asleep the whole time until their usual alarm. So, that's another thing that happened. I know stories like this are hard to believe without physical proof. For the rocking chair, I do have the video where you can see it moving in that strange, irregular way. For the hallway stuff, it's just my experience and how it felt. But I can show people the layout, you know? If I wanted to, I could take pictures of the hallway, the couch where I sit, the fireplace, the little window by the door, especially at night, just so it's easier to picture. I didn't add any photos right away because honestly, I wasn't sure if anyone would even care to hear this. It's vulnerable, putting things like this out there. I guess the reason I'm sharing it is because, as unsettling as it was while it was happening, it doesn't really scare me when I look back on it now. If anything, it feels like my grandpa and my aunt found little ways to stick around. A rocking chair moving like someone's leaning back with their coffee. A shy, curious presence peeking around the hallway corner. It feels less like a haunting and more like a reminder that they loved being here with us. And maybe, in their own way, they still do. Okay, so this happened a few years ago, in 2019, and I still think about it way more than I want to. My name's Lena, and at the time I was dating this guy, Mark. We'd just left a friend's apartment after a movie night. Not a party, not drinking, nothing like that. It was close to 1 in the morning, but we were completely sober. No alcohol, no drugs, not even especially tired. Just that slightly sleepy, cozy feeling after hanging out and laughing for a few hours. Back then, Mark and I didn't live together yet, so he was driving me back to my old townhouse. The neighborhood I lived in was really tucked away. Tons of tall trees, barely any streetlights, and these long stretches of road where the headlights were the only thing cutting through the dark. To get to my street, you had to stop at this 4-way stop sign right next to the neighborhood playground and the community pool. The playground was one of those older ones with the metal slide and creaky swings, and the pool was surrounded by this black iron fence. Behind all of that, just a wall of dark woods. And that stop sign, I swear to you, it turned into the longest stop of my life. We pulled up and came to a complete stop. There weren't any other cars around, so at first it was just this normal, quiet moment. Mark had his hands on the wheel. We were mid-conversation about something stupid, like arguing over which movie sequel was the worst. And then we both kind of fell silent at the same time. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was just someone walking near the playground, maybe a late-night dog walker or something. But it felt off enough that I turned my head to look directly. And that's when I realized I had no idea what I was looking at. There was something standing there, tall, like at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. It had the general shape of a person, but it was all wrong. Its arms looked too long, and hanging from them were these huge sheets of, I don't even know what to call them. Wings, I guess, but not like bird wings. There were no feathers. It was more like these big, leathery flaps that caught the light from our headlights in this weird, dull way. It was standing upright, hunched a little, like it didn't quite know how to use its own body. The whole posture just screamed, wrong. I'm staring at this thing, and time kind of stretches. I remember being so terrified that my brain almost refused to process it. Like it was trying to decide, is this a person in a costume? Is this a shadow? Am I imagining this? Then it moved. It turned its head slightly, like it was looking toward the far end of the pool, and then it just took off. It started running, and the way it moved did not look human. It was too fast, and there was this smoothness to it that didn't match the long, weird limbs. In one motion, without slowing down, it leapt. And when I say it leapt, I mean it cleared the metal fence around the pool like it was nothing. No stumble, no pushing off like a person would. It just sailed over it and landed on the other side, then kept going straight into the tree line. The whole thing was completely silent. I froze. I didn't say a word. I didn't even breathe. It felt like if I moved or spoke, I'd somehow draw its attention back. For a few seconds, the car was dead quiet. Then Mark, without me saying anything at all, still staring straight ahead, said in this calm but not calm voice, like he was forcing the words out so he wouldn't panic, "Yeah, I saw it too." After that, he slowly eased his foot onto the gas, and we rolled through the intersection. I remember clutching the door handle, just staring out at the woods as we passed, trying to see if it was still there, hiding somewhere. He drove me the rest of the way home, but it felt like the longest drive we'd ever taken together. My place, of course, backed right up to the woods. Lucky me. When we pulled into my driveway, he put the car in park and just sat there for a second. I could tell he didn't want to get out. Honestly, I didn't blame him. I didn't want to get out either. The idea of standing outside, even for a few seconds, felt horrible. But he walked me to the door anyway. We both kept glancing at the tree line behind my building, expecting to see something standing there between the trunks, watching us. Every little rustle or crack made my heart jump. Nothing showed up, but that almost made it worse, because it meant it could be anywhere. We said goodnight really quickly. No lingering, no chatting on the porch like we usually did. As soon as I got inside, I locked the door, then locked it again. I remember turning on every light in my little place and just standing in the living room, listening. We texted each other a bit that night, but neither of us really knew what to say. It was a lot of, "You're sure we saw that, right?" "Yeah, I'm sure." Over the next few days, we kept bringing it up, trying to make sense of it. We went through every possible explanation we could think of. Could it have been a person in some kind of wingsuit or costume? Maybe some really big bird and our eyes just played tricks. Maybe a deer or something and we just got freaked out. But none of it fit. The height, the shape, the wings, the way it moved, how easy it cleared that fence. It all added up to something that just didn't match anything we knew. Eventually, we tried telling a couple of people, family, friends, that kind of thing. And of course, nobody believed us. We got a lot of, "You were probably tired. Maybe you caught a shadow and freaked yourselves out. Are you sure you guys didn't have a drink or two?" We kept insisting, "No, we were sober. We weren't even sleepy tired." But after a while, we just stopped bringing it up to anyone else. It was exhausting trying to defend something we couldn't explain ourselves. But between us, we knew. We know what we saw. Even now, when I drive through that neighborhood, and I still do sometimes, I get this awful sinking feeling as I approach that same intersection. As soon as I see the playground and that black fence around the pool and the dark stretch of trees behind it, it's like my body remembers before my mind does. My hands get a little sweaty on the steering wheel. I catch myself checking the edges of the woods, half expecting to see something tall and wrong-shaped standing there. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was something natural that we just couldn't identify, or if it was something else. Something that wasn't supposed to be in our world. But here's the part that really sticks with me. The way it moved, the way it leapt that fence without even trying, the way it disappeared into the trees without a sound. It gave me this strong, clear feeling that whatever it was, it did not want to be seen. And I think, for just a few seconds that night, we saw it anyway. Okay, so my dad, Miguel, finally gave me the green light to share his weird stories with other people. And this is one that always gives me chills when he tells it. He was in his early 20s, camping up in northern Idaho, way out in the Rockies, with my Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda, who aren't actually my blood relatives, just close family friends who've always been uncle and aunt to me. They pulled into this little forest campground late in the afternoon, and right at the entrance the ranger warned them, "Just so you know, there's been a lot of grizzly activity the past few days. Keep any food locked up and don't sleep in a tent if you can help it." So instead of pitching a tent, they decided to sleep in my uncle's old blue Ford van. You know the type. No insulation, always smells faintly like gasoline and camp smoke. They hung thick quilts and old blankets over all the windows to block light and hopefully make it feel a little safer. Before bed, though, Uncle Ray realized they didn't have enough firewood for the night. He looks at my dad and goes, "Hey, Miguel, can you go grab some more wood from the tree line before it gets completely dark?" And my dad's thinking, "Are you kidding me? After that grizzly speech?" But out loud, he just kind of mutters, "Yeah, okay," because he didn't want to sound scared. So he grabs this tiny flashlight, the cheap kind with the weak yellow beam, and walks out toward the edge of the trees. He told me that from the moment he stepped off the gravel and into the needles and brush, he felt it. That feeling that something is watching you. Not just, "I'm a little creeped out," but that heavy, prickly sensation on the back of your neck. Every time he bent down to pick up a branch, he'd whip around and shine the light into the darkness. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. He tried to shake it off, but it just got stronger. Finally, he thought, "Nope, I'm done," and went back with an armful of wood, heart pounding. He tossed the wood down by the fire ring and said to Ray and Linda, "Something's out there. I don't know what it is, but it's watching. I can feel it." They kind of laughed it off at first, chalked it up to the ranger's grisly warning getting in his head. But my aunt did say, more quietly, "Well, let's just be extra careful tonight." Eventually, the fire burned low. They packed everything up, and all three of them piled into the van. They closed the doors, hung the last blanket across the front windshield, and tried to settle in. Outside, the campground was quiet. Too quiet, my dad said. Normally, you can at least hear people murmuring, a radio, kids laughing, something. But that night, it felt like the whole place was holding its breath. Sometime in the middle of the night, he thinks it was around 2 or 3 in the morning, they were jolted awake by the van being lifted. Not bumped, not nudged, lifted. The whole van suddenly lurched to one side and then started shaking violently back and forth, like some giant pair of hands had grabbed it and was trying to tip it over. My dad said his first thought was, "This is way too strong to be a person." And then, if this is a bear, it's the angriest bear in North America. All three of them were frozen. Aunt Linda was gripping his arm so hard her nails dug in. The blankets were rustling, metal was creaking, and the van rocked so hard that stuff from the floor slid around and banged into the walls. Then they heard the sound. My dad has had multiple bear encounters, real ones. He's been chased before. He's heard them huff, growl, snap their jaws, bluff charge. He knows what a bear sounds like. He said this was nothing like that. The three of them just stared at each other in the dark, eyes wide, not saying a word. Nobody even thought about pulling back a blanket to look. He said it was like their bodies refused to move. Pure, cold fear. After what felt like forever, but was probably only a few seconds, the shaking stopped. No more rocking, no more footsteps. Just silence. They sat there in the dark, absolutely still. My dad said you could hear the ticking of the van's engine cooling and Aunt Linda's shaky breathing, and that was it. They didn't move. They didn't talk. They didn't even risk turning on a flashlight. He said, "We're going to wait until it's light. I don't care how long it takes." So they waited. Eventually, this faint gray light started to seep in around the edges of the blankets. Dawn. The birds slowly started up again. Only then did they work up the courage to look outside. My dad peeled back the blanket on the side window just an inch, just enough to peek out. The campground was empty. Every single RV, every tent, every little camper that had been there when they arrived, gone. The big fifth-wheel trailer a few spots down, gone. The family with kids that had been roasting marshmallows earlier, gone. It was like everyone had just vanished in the night and left them behind. Finally, they eased the van door open and stepped out into the cold morning air. Behind the van, near the shallow ditch that ran along the edge of the loop, they saw it. In the mix of slushy snow and mud was a single, huge footprint. My dad told me it looked human at first glance, heel, arch, toes. But it was enormous, way bigger than any normal boot print. The heel had sunk in so deep, he stuck his fingers in just to measure it, and it went down at least 4 inches. He just stood there staring at it, and then quietly said, "That's not a bear." Uncle Ray came around and went pale when he saw it. Aunt Linda put her hand over her mouth. None of them said Sasquatch out loud yet, but they were all thinking it. They got out of there fast after that, packed up the few things they'd left out, climbed into the van, and drove. On the way home, they stopped in this tiny roadside shop, one of those combo gas station diner souvenir places. My dad went inside to grab a coffee and maybe calm his nerves. Right inside the door, on the corkboard next to the help wanted flyers and lost dog notices, there was this poster. It said something like, "Have you seen or heard anything unusual? Report possible Sasquatch encounters in this area." And there was a local number to call. My dad just froze in front of it. He started looking around the shop and noticed that they had a whole little section dedicated to Bigfoot stuff. Books, pamphlets, stickers, that kind of thing. One of the books had a page with drawings and photos of supposed Sasquatch footprints. He flipped it open, and his heart just sank. The shape, the proportions, the way the toes splayed, it matched what they had just seen behind the van almost exactly. When he went back out to the van, he showed the pictures to Ray and Linda. They both got really quiet. Then Aunt Linda just nodded and said, "That's what it looked like." And my dad said that was the exact moment it really hit him. Whatever shook that van in the middle of the night, whatever made that impossible sound and left that massive print, wasn't a bear. He's always told me, "Look, I can't prove it to anyone. I can only tell you what happened. But I know what I felt, what I heard, and what I saw. And I am 100% sure that wasn't any animal I've ever known." He also says he's kind of glad no one pulled back those blankets. From what he's read since then, these things, if they're out there, don't seem to like being seen. So, okay, let me take you back for a second. This was around 2007 when I was in my last couple of years of high school. My best friend at the time, Mia, lived in this massive old house just outside town. It was one of those late 1800s places with creaky wooden floors, stained glass windows, those super detailed ceilings. The whole Gothic postcard vibe. The house sat back from the road, surrounded by these tall, overgrown trees and a hedge that had definitely given up on being trimmed. Even in the middle of summer, it always felt like late afternoon in there. You know that dim, gray light that makes everything look a little bit haunted? Yeah, that was the baseline. I practically lived at Mia's place. Her parents were really relaxed about us having people over, so the house kind of became the default hangout spot. Movie nights, birthday parties, sleepovers where no one actually slept, everything happened there. And the weird thing was, almost everyone who stayed over had some kind of creepy experience. For some people, it was waking up and not being able to move, like sleep paralysis. For others, it was small stuff. Doors that definitely had been shut suddenly standing open, keys not being where you left them, that sort of thing. I remember one friend swearing she saw someone walk past the bathroom door in the middle of the night, even though everyone who lived in the house was asleep. For me, it started with my necklace. Back then, I wore this little silver cross on a chain. Nothing fancy, just something I wore every day without really thinking about it. And for some reason, whenever I was in Mia's kitchen, the clasp would just come undone. The chain would unfasten and slip off my neck, always in the kitchen, nowhere else. The first time it happened, I thought, okay, old chain, no big deal. The second time I thought, weird coincidence. The third time, I actually tested the clasp because I was getting annoyed. It was perfectly fine. Plus, the chain was long enough that I could pull it over my head without undoing it, so I never fiddled with the clasp during the day. But in that kitchen, click, off it went. Apart from that and the general someone's watching you feeling in certain rooms, nothing major ever happened to me there. The really intense stuff always happened to Mia. Footsteps on the stairs when everyone was downstairs. Her name being whispered when she was alone, that sort of thing. She hated talking about it because she always said she didn't want to feed whatever was in the house. Anyway, Fast forward to the night with the voice message. I was at home, in my bedroom, on my old desktop computer. This was peak early internet era for me. Big, chunky monitor, noisy fan, messenger windows everywhere. Mia and I were talking over Skype, mostly instant messages, sending dumb pictures back and forth, that kind of thing. Every now and then, we'd record these short voice messages instead of typing, just for fun. So we're chatting away, totally normal conversation, and then she goes, "Hang on, I've got to go down for dinner. Be right back." She sets her status to away, and I figure I've got at least half an hour, so I start doing some homework. After maybe 5 minutes, definitely not long enough for a whole family dinner, I get a notification. New voice message from Mia. I remember frowning at the screen thinking, wow, that was fast. I clicked on it, expecting some silly comment about her food or a BRB, still eating kind of thing. He wasn't speaking clearly. It was like someone talking in another room with the door mostly shut. Just this garbled mumbling, like words that almost make sense, but not quite. I couldn't pick out a single actual sentence. It went on for a few seconds, then just cut off. No bye, no laughter, nothing. Just static silence at the end. I replayed it a bunch of times because I was trying to figure out if it was just the program glitching or if my speakers were dying. You know when you keep listening, hoping you'll catch one clear word that explains everything? Yeah, that. When Mia came back online, I messaged her and was like, "Hey, what was that weird voice message you sent?" And she just replied, "What voice message?" I told her, "The one from 5 minutes after you left. The one that sounds like someone knocking the mic and then a dude mumbling at me." She got really quiet after that. You know when someone's typing and deleting because you can see the little pop up and vanish? It was like that. Finally, she said, "I haven't been upstairs. We've all been at the table. Even the dogs are down here begging for scraps." I asked if maybe one of her brothers had gone into her room, but she said everyone had been at dinner the whole time. Her laptop was open on her desk, Skype still running, but the room itself was empty. Now, Mia was not the prank type, especially not with anything related to that house. She'd had enough scary experiences already and always said she didn't want to give the house thing any more attention than it already got. If she'd wanted to freak me out, she could have done way better than sending a slightly confusing audio clip. And honestly, at the time I wasn't even scared. I was more puzzled. It was like getting a spam email in a language you don't speak. You know it's meant to be a message, but it doesn't quite land. For years, I kept that audio file. I moved it from computer to computer, convinced I'd one day clean it up with better software and finally understand what it said. At some point, though, new laptop, hard drive crash, who knows, it just disappeared. I've looked for it more than once, and it's just gone. Could there be a completely normal explanation? Sure. Maybe Skype glitched and mashed together old audio, or some random interference got picked up and turned into that weird mumbling. Technology does strange things, especially back then. But part of me likes the other explanation better. Because if you think about it, that message was sent from an empty bedroom in a haunted, gloomy old house that had already been messing with us for years. So sometimes, when I'm in the mood to creep myself out a little, I choose to believe that on one very ordinary evening, a ghost figured out how to send me a voice message on Skype. So, I don't really talk about this in real life, but I'm gonna just tell it like I'm sitting across from you with the coffee, okay? When I was about 5 years old, we lived outside this small town, right next to a forest. There were only 2 houses out there, maybe a couple 100 meters apart. We lived in the one closer to the trees, and the other house had this pretty little lake that sort of belonged to them. It sounds cozy now, but back then it was different. One afternoon, it was just me and my older sister at home. Let's call her Eva. We were watching TV in the living room, and I got really thirsty. So I got up and walked down this long hallway toward the kitchen. We hardly had any real doors inside the house, mostly open doorways, except the entrance to the kitchen. That one had these hanging strings with little wooden beads and plastic balls on them, like a cheap curtain. They always made this soft, clacking sound whenever you went through. I remember stepping through those beads into the kitchen. The syrup bottle I liked, the one I'd mix with water, was all the way at the back of the counter, and I was too short to reach it. So I started yelling for my sister. "Eva! Eva!" Nothing. I was a dramatic kid, so after a few seconds of being ignored, I started screaming and crying. One tear rolled down my cheek, and right as it did, everything went quiet. I don't mean no one answered me quiet. I mean the clock above the doorway stopped ticking. The fridge stopped buzzing. It was like someone hit mute on the entire house. The silence was so heavy it almost rang in my ears. I froze. Then I heard it. One loud stomp, like when someone slams their foot into the floor out of anger. It echoed through the kitchen. Before I could even process what was happening, I heard running, really fast, coming straight toward the kitchen entrance from the hallway behind me. I panicked and jumped up onto the table in the middle of the kitchen, just stood there, shaking and trying not to breathe too loud. I stared at the doorway, at those beads, and then, in one horrible second, something slammed into the doorway. It was a body, a person, or what was left of one. It was shoved halfway into the doorframe, lying there, and its head turned so it was staring straight at me. The face was twisted, like it had been crushed. The eyes were bulging way out, almost like snail stalks reaching toward me. They weren't moving, just stuck like that. I wanted to scream so badly, but nothing came out. My mouth was open, and I couldn't make a sound. My whole body just locked. Then, just as fast, the thing got yanked back out of the doorway, around the corner. Gone. The bead curtain swung so hard it rattled, like a truck had just driven through the hallway. And then, click, buzz, the clock started ticking again. The fridge hummed like normal. I was still standing on the table, trembling, tears all over my face, when Eva walked into the doorway. She laughed at me, asked why I was standing on the table and why I was so pale. I just climbed down, said nothing, and wiped my face. I never told her. I was terrified she'd make fun of me or tell me I was imagining things. The only person I told was a friend in kindergarten the next week. Let's call her Lenka. She just made up her own spooky story on top of mine like we were playing pretend, and I realized, okay, nobody's going to take this seriously. So I shoved it down and tried to forget, and that's when things got worse. My room in the new house was the one furthest from the entrance, right at the back. One night, I woke up to this strange clicking sound. It was pitch dark. I sat up and looked around but couldn't see anything. Then I looked at the window. There was a dark figure crouching outside on the little flower ledge, right in front of the glass. It was very still, staring at me. The only thing I could really make out were its pale eyes and a wide, open mouth, like its jaw was hanging loose. My whole body went cold. I did the only thing I could think of. I dove under my blanket and curled up. I heard it jump down, thud, and then run around the house. The old metal gate outside screeched open, slammed, and then I heard the front door open. I was completely frozen. I couldn't call for my sister, couldn't move, nothing. I just lay there, feeling my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Suddenly, something grabbed me. Whatever it was pinned my hands into the mattress, pushed my face down into the bed, and held me there so hard I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone was kneeling on my back. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then, nothing. It just stopped. I shot upright, gasping, and looked around the room. First at my sister. She was sleeping in the same room back then. As I looked at her, she made this strange, short sound in her sleep, like a muffled whimper. I scanned the floor, the ceiling, the window. Nothing. My brain did something really stupid then. I thought, maybe I imagined it. Let me test it. So I lay back down, pulled the blanket over my head again, and waited. It happened a second time. This time, it pinned my arms and shoulders harder. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe, and it lasted longer, maybe 10 seconds. Long enough for me to think, I'm going to die right now. Then it stopped. Again. Like someone just stood up and walked away. I sat up, shaking, looked at my sister. Another weird little sound from her as soon as my eyes landed on her. And again, nothing in the room. In the morning, when I woke up properly, I realized there was a short wardrobe right up against the back of my bed, right behind my head. And I remember thinking, I'm really glad I never looked behind me last night. Weird little things started happening after that. Once, when Linka came back to visit with her mom, we were sitting on the floor in my room, playing with Lego. Out of nowhere, an empty plastic bag on the floor suddenly shot straight up into the air, like a perfect vertical jump, hovered for a second above my head, and then flew behind where she was sitting. We both saw it. We stared at each other for a moment, our eyes wide, and then, silently, we both just pretended nothing had happened and went back to playing. Another time, my grandma, Babichka Hanna, came to stay during the summer holidays. One Sunday morning, I woke up and saw this huge clump of hair on my blanket, right in front of me. Not like one strand, but a bundle, like you'd brushed a big dog and dropped it there. The hairs were long, almost an inch, and thick. I freaked out and ran to my grandma. She came to my room, looked at it, and by then it somehow looked smaller, like it had shrunk. She laughed it off and joked, must be from a giant spider. I remember thinking, what kind of spider has hair like that? But I just went on with my day. A little later, my sister took me to visit a castle. Let's say Helfstein Castle, since I'm from the Czech Republic. When we got home that day, everyone stayed outside in the yard for a bit, talking. I ran ahead, up the stairs into the house. Something moved. I turned toward the armchair and saw a huge, hairy arm rising slowly up from behind the armrest. The arm was thick, covered in driving hair, and ended in long, curved claws. I didn't wait to see the rest. I spun around and sprinted back toward the door. I heard it running after me, heavy footsteps on the floor. I flung the door open, practically jumped down the staircase, a whole flight of stairs in one go, slammed the door behind me, and only then realized I hadn't broken my legs. My parents were furious. They yelled at me for being reckless and dramatic. I just stood there, shaking, and didn't say a word about what I'd seen. 2 years passed. My sister moved out. I thought, okay, maybe it'll stop now. Maybe it was something tied to that time. But it didn't. We still lived near the forest, and I used to go for walks with my dog every day because I was lonely and my computer back then was terrible. My dog, let's call her Mina, was a mixed breed, small but full of energy and pretty stubborn. Half the time she refused to listen to me, so I was always worried she'd run off. One day, we went deeper into the forest than usual. Mina was walking beside me for once, but every now and then she'd suddenly turn around and stare into the trees behind us. At first, she didn't bark, just stared, ears up. Then she let out this low, hesitant bark, like she didn't really want to draw attention to us. I turned around too. Nothing. We kept walking. I glanced back again a few seconds later and saw it, a tall, dark figure slipping behind a tree. And the way it moved, fast but deliberate, made it clear it had been watching us. I could see one arm resting on the side of the trunk. It was the same kind of hand I'd seen behind the armchair. Big, hairy, wrong. Mina suddenly stopped reacting, just went quiet and stayed close to my leg. That scared me even more. I started walking slower, trying not to make noise. Then I heard it, running again, trying to get closer. I turned quickly and caught a clearer glimpse of the arm sliding back behind another tree. That was it. I broke. I started screaming for help. There was a man working in the forest, cutting trees a little way off. He dropped what he was doing and ran to me, asking what was wrong. I couldn't tell him the truth, so I just asked if he'd seen anyone on his way over. He said no. He walked me home. After that, I stayed out of that forest for a whole year. By then, I was paranoid, constantly turning around to see if anything was behind me. I couldn't relax, couldn't sit in the dark. My mom bought me a DVD of some guy telling calm stories to help kids fall asleep. I had to sleep with the lights on. At some point, I moved to a different bedroom, this one closer to the kitchen. It had a glass door, which, if you're already scared of seeing things, is the worst design choice ever. I made a rule for myself. Only leave the room if I see that the hallway lights are already on, so I wouldn't have to run half blind to hit the switch. One night, I was singing karaoke in my room, and I needed to go to the bathroom. I glanced to my right and saw the lights in the hallway were on, so I opened my door and stepped out. I walked maybe 2 or 3 steps and suddenly realized it was completely dark. The light that had just been on was now off. I froze and looked down the hallway toward the corner I needed to turn. Slowly, something leaned out from behind the corner. I snapped out of it, turned around, and ran back into my room. I slammed the door so hard my parents heard it. I grabbed the handle because I immediately felt something trying to open the door from the other side. It twisted and rattled, and I held on, fighting it, screaming. Then the hallway light flicked on again. The pressure on the handle stopped. A second later, my mom opened the door, annoyed, asking why I was slamming things and shouting. I just shook my head and said nothing. Again. Eventually, we moved to a completely different house in a town when I was around 6th grade. New place, new school. I was hoping this thing, whatever it was, would just stay in the forest. My new room had my desk against a wall, a window in front of it, a glass door to my left leading to my parents' bedroom, and another door to my right leading to the living room. Sometimes, when I was playing games, I'd catch something in the corner of my eye, a dark figure standing behind the glass door. But every time I turned to look, it would slip into the bathroom attached to my parents' room. Whenever I had to go into that bathroom, I'd run in and out as fast as possible and pull the door closed behind me, trying not to slam it. About 5 months after we moved in, it escalated again. One night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to that same clicking sound I'd heard years earlier. I rolled over and looked at the glass door. There was someone pressed up against it. A pale face, eyes and palms squashed against the glass, staring straight at me. It reminded me of that corpse in the kitchen doorway from when I was little. I turned away, facing the wall, squeezing my eyes shut like a little kid, thinking, if I don't look at it, it'll go away. Then I heard the door open. The wooden floor under the carpet creaked, slowly, step by step, as something walked toward my bed. I felt a cold air on the back of my neck, like someone was leaning over me, breathing. My legs went freezing cold too, as if something was touching them. I was sweating, but I couldn't move. Eventually, somehow, I just blacked out. When I woke up again, it was still dark, and I realized I couldn't move at all, from my toes up to my neck. I could only move my eyes. In the middle of the room, I could see a huge shape, darker than the darkness around it. I was pretty sure it was that thing, but the moonlight wasn't strong enough to show details. That was my first real sleep paralysis. At least, that's what I later learned to call it. In the moment, I honestly thought I'd woken up disabled. I slipped back into unconsciousness and woke again around 7 a.m., still paralyzed, still aware. It took about half an hour before I could move properly again. I'll never forget that feeling. Life went on. I eventually got into high school and started staying up late at night on my old computer. My dad had this habit of getting up in the middle of the night because he snored too much and would go to the living room so my mom could sleep. I'd hear the bedroom door open, hear his footsteps, sometimes feel him bump into my chair as he passed. It was familiar. One night, I was playing games until around 3 a.m. There was almost no sound in my headphones. I heard the door behind me close, softly. I figured it was my dad going to the living room. Then I heard it again. I turned around. I had 3 closets, 2 behind me and 1 to my right, near the door. I didn't see anything unusual, so I shrugged and turned back to my screen. Then I heard a soft thump, like a door closing in a weird rhythm. I turned halfway in my chair, just enough to see out of the corner of my eye. One of the closet doors was slightly open, and someone, was holding it. I was absolutely terrified. I ended up falling asleep in my chair because I was too scared to stand up and walk to my bed. That became a bad habit. If I stayed up too late, I'd rather fall asleep at the desk than cross the room in the dark. When I walked home from school with friends, I'd constantly check behind us. Just a quick look over my shoulder every few seconds. It made them paranoid too. They'd snap at me like, "Stop doing that, you're freaking me out." And I'd laugh it off. But inside, I was genuinely scared. In my final year of school, when I was around 18, we had a holiday so I could stay up late. That night, I actually managed to go to bed instead of sleeping in the chair. I was sitting in bed, wrapped in my blanket, leaning slightly back with the blanket tucked under me, not lying fully down. It was around 2 a.m. when I heard noises from the living room. At first, I thought it was my dad. Maybe he'd fallen asleep on the couch again. But then I heard him snoring in my parents' bedroom. So, whoever was in the living room wasn't him. I stopped breathing and focused on the sounds. I heard footsteps slowly moving around, like someone was pacing, looking for something. Then I heard the sound of a plastic bag rustling, being picked up and dropped repeatedly. I was just about to get up and check when there was a loud bang, like whoever it was had tripped and crashed into the door. Silence. Then more footsteps. A minute later, another crash against the same door. As they were getting up, I could hear their weight pressing against the door, like someone sliding a hand up it, trying to stand. Then the door handle moved. I finally snapped and started screaming for my parents to wake up. It took my mom almost a full minute to come out and check. She opened the living room door. Nothing. No one there. No plastic bag on the floor. No explanation. After that, I finished school, and for a while, things got quiet. Years later, I got a new job with rotating shifts, mornings, afternoons, nights. After about a year of working there, my sister came by to visit with her kids. I remember looking out my window and seeing them all outside in the backyard with my parents, talking and laughing. At the same time, I heard my front door handle rattle and then the door slam into the couch that was just behind it. I didn't think much of it at first, just assumed someone had come back inside. Then I realized everyone was still outside. I turned back toward the door. The door was half open, and on the couch behind the corner, I saw a dark figure standing there, sort of hunched, like it was waiting for me to come over and look properly. I did the opposite. I turned my music up to maximum and ignored it. Eventually, my family came back in, and the door was still open like nothing had ever happened. Sometimes after that, if I was home alone and my mom left the living room door open, I'd see a head peek around the corner of the couch. Always just enough to know it was there, never long enough for details. And then, it just stopped. It's been about 5 years now since anything really happened. No more footsteps, no more doors opening, no more hands on my shoulders, no more figures in the glass. Sometimes I still feel watched, but nothing like before. I've never smoked, never done drugs, barely drink. I wasn't high, I wasn't drunk. I I wasn't trying to scare myself on purpose. I know some of this could be explained by sleep paralysis, or an overactive imagination, or whatever. But I also know how real it all felt. The sounds, the weight, the cold breath, the arm in the living room, the body in the kitchen doorway. I still believe it was real. If it ever starts again, maybe I'll have more to say. But for now, that's where my story ends. Hey everyone, welcome to Paranormal M channel. The start of the week is always crazy busy, but I'm always excited to sit down and share paranormal stories from all around the world with you. It honestly makes me feel more pumped and passionate every single time. Don't hesitate to send in your own paranormal experiences. I'd love to hear them. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Alright, are you ready for today's paranormal stories? Turn on a nightlight, pull the blanket over your head, and let's dive in. Okay, so I just wanted to talk this through out loud because I still don't really know what to make of it. I live in the house I grew up in. We moved here when I was a kid, a little over 25 years ago now. It's this old Victorian terraced place on a quiet street. Nothing dramatic from the outside, just another slightly wonky, over a century-old house with creaky floorboards and doors that don't quite shut properly. But here's the weird thing. Pretty much every night, we hear footsteps on the upstairs landing. Not little creaks or the odd crack of old wood, actual, steady footsteps. You can hear them going from one end of the landing to the other, like someone is pacing or doing a slow patrol. If I'm in my bedroom, they go past my door, turn around near the bathroom, and come back. If I'm downstairs late, I can hear them through the ceiling, like someone's walking above the living room. Sometimes it sounds like whoever, or whatever it is, walks right up to my bedroom door and stops. And that's the bit that really gets me. I'll be lying there in bed, lights off, and I'll hear the steps come closer, 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 then stop right outside. Every so often, I feel this pressure on the door, as if someone is leaning on it or gently pushing, testing it. The handle doesn't move, the door never opens, but I feel it flex just a bit in the frame. One night a few years ago, it went a step further, no pun intended. I'd gone out onto the landing because I could hear the footsteps and I thought, I'm going to catch whoever's doing this. Maybe it's the house settling. Maybe I'll finally figure out where the sound is coming from. So I'm standing there, about halfway between my room and the bathroom, just waiting. And the footsteps don't stop. They come right toward me. I can hear them as clearly as if someone is wearing shoes on the floorboards. One step, another, another, and then they pass straight through me. The only way I can describe it is like walking through an icy drought that has weight, like air that's somehow heavy. My whole body went cold for a second, my chest, my arms, everything, and then it was gone. The footsteps kept going behind me, down the landing, like nothing had happened. I was absolutely terrified in that moment. I just kind of froze, then bolted back into my room and shut the door. But after that, nothing else happened. No objects flying around, no voices, nothing like that. Just the same old footsteps, night after night. We did try to explain it away. At first, I thought it might be our neighbors. The houses are attached, so sound does travel. But on that side, we've got an older couple, Pat and Leonard, and they both walk very slowly, shuffling really. The steps we hear are brisk, like a younger person with a normal stride. Plus, the footsteps line up exactly with our landing and our staircase. It doesn't sound like it's coming from next door at all. Then we thought maybe it was the heating. Old pipes can make all kinds of strange clanks and pops. But it happens in the middle of summer, even when the boiler's been off for ages. And And again, it's the rhythm that gets you. Heel toe, not random ticking. It's not just me either. That's one of the reasons I've never fully managed to laugh it off. My friend Jenna once stayed in the spare room, and in the morning she said, "Did one of you come and check on me in the night? I heard footsteps come right up to my door and then go away again." None of us had been up there. We were all asleep. Over the years, there have been a few other odd things people in the family have seen or heard, though not constantly, just little incidents dotted across time. My dad, well, my stepdad actually, his name's Martin, had one of the clearest experiences. He woke up in the middle of the night and saw a woman moving around at the end of the bed. She was solid enough that his first thought was, "Oh, that's my wife." So he moved his feet over to give her room to sit down. Except she didn't sit. She just sort of circled around the bed and then wasn't there anymore. He reached over and my mom, Elaine, was fast asleep next to him. That was the moment it hit him that whoever he'd seen wasn't her. My mom had her own moment too. She was downstairs one afternoon, coming out of the kitchen, and she saw a man walk through the hallway. Just this quick glimpse of someone in dark trousers and a white shirt, like an office worker coming home. She thought it was my brother at first, but then realized she was alone in the house. The man just vanished mid-stride. Those things are rare though. It's not like we're constantly seeing people appear and disappear. Most of the time, it's completely normal here. We watch TV, we cook dinner, we argue about who left the light on in the bathroom. It's an ordinary house with slightly peeling paint and too many books. And then, at night, the landing starts walking. I'm not saying I'm convinced it's anything paranormal. Honestly, part of me really wants there to be a boring, logical explanation. Some weird acoustic quirk of the house, or pipes that somehow mimic footsteps in the strangest, most perfect way. I'd love to be able to say, "Oh, it was just this," and forget about it. But after so many years, with different people hearing the same thing, and that one time the steps went straight through me, I genuinely don't know. So that's my experience, really. I still sleep here every night. I still hear the footsteps more often than not. And I still lie there sometimes thinking, okay, if this is just the house, can it please hurry up and show me how it's doing that? Until then, I just sort of accept that, for whatever reason, our house has someone, or something, that likes to walk the landing after dark. So, I don't really talk about this kind of thing, but I'm just going to say it like I'm sitting across from you with a cup of chai in my hand. I live in Pune, in a small 2 BHK flat, with my 5-year-old daughter. Her name's Anya. Her mom works an early morning shift at a hospital, and I work afternoons and late evenings at an IT support job. So most days, it's just me and Anya together from late night till around noon. She's a quiet kid, shy with strangers, very clingy with me, but she's got this whole world in her head. She talks to her dolls, her stuffed panda, lines them all up and has these long, serious conversations with them like they're real people. A few months back, she started mentioning someone named Nina. At first it was simple stuff like, "Papa, Nina said I shouldn't jump on the sofa," or "Nina says you like to steal mangoes from trees." I honestly just thought it was an imaginary friend. Kids make them up all the time, right? I figured maybe it was from some cartoon or a YouTube video she'd watched when I wasn't paying attention. I even joked with her once like, "Oh, Nina said that? Tell Nina she's very strict." She just smiled in this shy way and said, "She's nice. She loves you." I didn't think much of it. Then one night, I woke up around 3 a.m. I wasn't fully asleep. You know that half-dreaming, half-awake state? I heard Anya's voice from her room. At first I thought she was just talking in her sleep, which she does sometimes. But then I realized she was giggling, whispering, like she was talking to someone. I got up, went to her room, and just stood outside the slightly open door for a second. I could hear her tiny voice, all excited. And then, I swear to you, I heard another sound. Like a voice, but not very clear. Softer, older, almost like someone humming while they talk. Not full words, just that gentle, familiar rhythm. And that name, Nina, it hit me in a weird way. Because growing up, that's what everyone in my family used to call my mother. Her real name was Neelam, but nobody called her that. She was just Nina to everyone. She passed away in 2020. Anya was born the year after. She has never met my mom, and I've never told her we used to call my mom Nina. In front of her, I only ever say Nani or my mother. I don't have any of my mom's photos out in the house either. For a long time, I couldn't even look at them without tearing up, so they're all packed away in a box in the cupboard. So that name, it just sat in my chest like a stone. A few days later, in the afternoon, we were sitting on the floor playing with her blocks. She was in a good mood, so I tried to sound casual and asked, "Anya, who is Nina?" She didn't even pause to think. She just said, very simply, "She plays with me when you're tired. She misses you." The way she said it, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I felt my throat go dry. I asked, "What does Nina look like?" Anya started stacking 2 blocks on top of each other, and without looking up, she said, "She looks like you, but older. Her hair is white and soft, like cotton." My mom had gone completely white in her late 40s. She had this thick white hair that she used to tie into a messy bun. When I was a kid, I used to jokingly call her Snowhead, and she'd chase me around the house with a slipper. I hadn't told Anya any of this. I just stared at my daughter, and in that moment, I honestly didn't know whether I was losing my mind or whether something else was happening. After that, I started noticing small things. It's so soft that if there's any traffic noise outside, I can convince myself I imagined it. But when the house is quiet, it's clear enough that my whole body goes still. I keep telling myself, "You're just missing her, that's all." Grief plays tricks on your head. I know that. I've read that. But one particular night, that's the one I can't shake. Anya had a bit of a cold, so she fell asleep next to me in my bed. The room was dark, the fan was on, and I was just lying there scrolling on my phone with the brightness low. Suddenly, she turned towards me, eyes still half closed, and in this very serious little voice, she asked, "Papa, why did you cry so much when Nina left you in the hospital?" I froze. My mom died in a hospital bed. I was there with her when the monitors went flat. I remember holding her hand and just breaking. I cried like a child. I don't think I've cried like that before or after. I have never told Anya that story. We don't talk about death in detail around her. If she asks where my mom is, I just say, "Nani is in heaven," or "She's with God." That's it. So I asked, very carefully, "Who told you that, Beta?" She blinked, looked confused for a second, then cuddled into my chest and mumbled, "Nina did. She said she's sorry you were alone." And then she just went back to sleep. I lay there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling this mix of fear, sadness, and, honestly, something like relief or comfort. I don't even know. I keep going back and forth in my head. On one side, there's the logical part of me going, Kids are imaginative. They pick things up. Maybe she overheard something. Maybe you mentioned hospital on a call. Maybe you're connecting dots that aren't there. And on the other side, there's this quiet, stubborn feeling in my chest that says, what if it really is her? What if your mother is here, watching Anya, keeping her company when you can't? Some days, it scares me. Not because I think my mom would hurt us, but because it means there's something out there I don't understand at all. Other days, I feel strangely grateful, like she found a way back into this home through my daughter. Even now, once in a while, Anya will be playing and casually say something like, "Nina says you should eat properly. You always forget." That's exactly the kind of nagging my mom used to do. So I don't know what this is. A child's imagination, a grieving mind looking for patterns, or something beyond that. All I know is, when I hear that faint humming from the other room, and my daughter's soft laughter mixed with it, I don't feel entirely alone. And I'm still trying to decide whether that should comfort me or terrify me. Maybe it's allowed to be both. So, I moved into this remodeled duplex in August 2025. It's a cute place, fresh paint, new floors, all that. So at first, I was honestly just excited. I took the bedroom at the very back of the house, right off the hallway, because it had the best light and looked out over the yard. For the first few weeks, everything was completely normal. And then the noises started. It was this random banging and scratching toward the back of the house, basically right behind my room. At first, my roommate Lena and I thought it had to be our neighbor or his dog. They share the other half of the duplex, so, thin walls, normal noises, whatever. But then it kept happening when we knew he was out of town. Like, one night the banging got so loud that Lena came into the hall and whispered, "Is someone at the back door?" She genuinely thought somebody was trying to break in. We checked. No one was there. Door was locked. Porch was empty. It was dead quiet outside. And the weird thing is, it's not every night. It's random. Just often enough that you can't totally ignore it, but spaced out enough that you start convincing yourself you imagined it. We kept telling ourselves, old house, it's just settling, no big deal. Except, other things started happening. So, the bathroom that's closest to my room, there's this little cabinet over the toilet. The door on that cabinet keeps being open. I figured it was a bad hinge, or someone grabbing toilet paper and forgetting to close it. No big mystery. Then one day I asked Lena and our other roommate Dan, "Hey, can you guys shut the cabinet after you use it? It's always open." And they both looked at me and said they thought I was the one leaving it open. We all started paying attention after that. I'd be the last one to leave for work. I'd shut the cabinet, actually make sure it clicked closed. And then I'd come home, and it would be slightly open again. Just an inch or two. Not swinging wide, just like someone had peeked in and forgotten to close it all the way. Around the same time, I started noticing my closet door in my bedroom being open when I came home. Now, this door does not just drift open. It's got one of those knobs you have to fully turn to unlatch. And I am obsessive about keeping it closed because my cat, Poppy, used to pee in closets at my old place. So closing that door is like muscle memory to me. Still, there were multiple days where I'd come home, set my bag down, and the closet door would be open a few inches. Enough that it felt intentional. And it wasn't like I was in a rush in the mornings. I would literally remember closing it. We kept blaming the house, the remodel, the foundation, air pressure, anything, really. Then about 2 weeks ago, it got harder to brush off. We decided to have a little get-together, a small party, just a few friends. We were all out on the back patio, music low, string lights on, just talking and drinking. My friend Jess brought her boyfriend, Mark, who none of us really knew yet. It was his first time at the house, so he had zero context for any of this stuff. At one point, Mark goes inside to use the bathroom, the same one with the weird cabinet. He's gone a couple of minutes, comes back out, and everything seems normal. He just sits down and joins the conversation again. We don't think anything of it. Later that night, after most people had left, and it was just a few of us cleaning up, Jess goes, "So, Mark heard something weird in your hallway, and then he said he saw something." He told Jess that out of the corner of his eye, he saw this shadowy figure, like maybe 4.5 or 5 feet tall, kind of like a small person. He described it as a darker patch in the hallway, shaped almost like someone's head and shoulders, with a face peeking around the frame of my bedroom door. And before he could really process it, the shadow just darted back into the room. Here's the part that really freaked me out. My bedroom door had been closed the entire time, and all of us, including Jess and Mark, had been outside on the patio. Nobody was inside the house when this happened except him. He thought it was some kind of prank. We had to tell him no, we weren't messing with him, and that he'd just casually described almost exactly where we keep hearing the banging and scratching. And of course, my room is the one that, according to our neighbor, used to be a child's bedroom before the remodel. Tiny bed, toys everywhere, that kind of thing. He told us that after we moved in, just in casual conversation. So everything just kind of lines up around that room. And then there's Poppy. This cat has never in her life peed on a bed. Not once. We've moved before. She's always adjusted fine. But since we came to this house, she's been peeing on my bed once or twice a week. It started maybe a week or two after we moved in, right around the time we first noticed the banging and scratching. I took her to the vet. They did a full workup, urine tests, blood work, the whole thing. No UTI, no kidney issues, nothing obvious. The vet said it might be stress. And at first I thought, okay, new environment, that makes sense. But now it kind of feels like she's reacting to whatever else is going on. Because here's the other weird part. Poppy has never been a cuddly cat. Ever. She's always been the, I'll sit at the opposite end of the couch and pretend I don't know you type. Lately though, she has started sleeping pressed right up against me, like glued to my side, every night. I roll over and she readjusts to stay as close as possible. She'll even stare at the bedroom door for long stretches, ears twitching, like she's tracking sounds I can't hear. So now we've got random banging and scratching near the back of the house, mostly by my room, a bathroom cabinet that won't stay shut, a closet door that keeps opening itself, a guest who knew nothing seeing a shadow figure by my bedroom door, a cat who's suddenly stressed, peeing on my bed, and now won't leave my side at night. All of it centered around this one room that used to belong to a kid. At this point, it doesn't feel like old house noises anymore. It feels focused, like something is attached to that part of the house, or maybe even to the room itself. We've actually talked about doing something, like saging the place, or having someone come bless the house, or at least setting some boundaries out loud, you know? I'm not trying to kick anything out aggressively, but I also really don't want my cat peeing on my bed forever because she's terrified of something I can't see. Anyway, that's where we're at. I'm honestly torn between There's gotta be a normal explanation, and, okay, this is definitely something else. So yeah, that's my weird back bedroom story. What do you think is going on? So, okay, picture this with me. My grandmother, my Nana, does not believe in anything supernatural. At all. She's the kind of woman who thinks ghosts are just drafts and weird noises are the house settling. Me, on the other hand, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm like an agnostic believer. I can't prove ghosts are real, but I also can't prove they aren't, you know? Anyway, at the time we had 2 cats, Milo and Daisy. If you've ever had cats, you know the feeling of them walking past you. You don't always see them, but you feel that little brush of fur or the pitter-patter of paws, and your brain just goes, oh, cat. So this one night, my younger brother Noah and I are in Nana's room, just chatting before bed. I'm in this old, squeaky armchair at the foot of her bed. Noah is sitting crisscross on the edge of the mattress, and Nana is propped up with a million pillows like she's holding court. We're talking about something dumb, probably me complaining about a professor, when all of a sudden, I feel something walk right in front of my legs. Like the exact sensation of a cat trotting past my shins. Tiny footsteps, that little movement of air. Without even thinking, I look down. And at the exact same time, Noah looks down too. Nothing. No cat. No shadow. Just carpet. I kind of laugh at first and say, I swear I just felt Milo walk by. Noah goes, okay, that's weird. I felt that too. Nana immediately squints at us and goes, oh, come on. You two are not going to start this haunted house nonsense with me. She thinks we're pulling a prank to scare her. I tell her, no, I'm serious. I really felt it. Noah backs me up, but she just waves us off. We eventually drop it. Nana's getting sleepy anyway, so Noah and I say goodnight. I head to my room down the hall, and Noah goes out to the living room to sleep on the big couch because he's just visiting for the week. Now, sometime around, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, I wake up to my Nana screaming. Not a polite little, ah, either. A full-on, startled, from-the-gut scream. I jump out of bed and run to her room. She's sitting up, breathing hard, clutching the blanket. Her bedside lamp is on. I'm like, Nana, are you okay? What happened? She says, I'm fine. But she looks really shaken. Her hands are trembling a little. I ask again, are you sure you're okay? She nods and insists, I'm fine. Go back to bed. She doesn't want to talk about it, so I respect it and leave. I'm back in my room maybe 20 minutes, scrolling on my phone in the dark, when I hear this soft thump. Not loud, not like something breaking, just a solid, dull bump, like something toppled over. At first, I think it's Noah shifting on the couch and bumping it into the wall. The big couch is right up against it, so I don't move right away. But the sound nags at me, and finally, I get up to check. I walk out into the hallway and see Noah still knocked out on the couch, totally dead to the world. But in the little hallway by the front door, this tall potted plant Nana has, her favorite snake plant in a ceramic pot, has tipped over. Dirt on the tile, leaves bent against the floor. I just sigh, stand it back up, scoop as much dirt into the pot as I can with my hands, and think, I am way too tired to deal with plants or ghosts right now. Then I go back to bed. The next morning, over coffee, I ask Nana about the scream. I say, were you having a bad dream? Is that what happened? She shakes her head right away. No, I was awake. So I ask, okay, Then what happened? No cat. She turns on the lamp, looks around the room. No movement. No jingling collar. Nothing. She shrugs it off, thinks maybe she imagined it, and lies back down. But she keeps the lamp on this time. A minute or two later, she feels this sudden, sharp pain on the same foot, like a stab or a jab, except there's no weight, no pressure, just this sting. It shocks her so badly she screams. She pulls back the blanket, expecting maybe a bug or something. There's nothing. No mark on her skin, no scratch, nothing out of place. While we're talking about this, Noah shuffles in, and I mention the plant that fell over. He immediately goes, "Oh, that had to be you. You probably bumped it when you were walking back from Nana's room last night." I tell him, "No, I didn't. I was already back in bed when it fell. I heard it after I'd been lying there for a while." We spend a good 15 minutes arguing about who could have knocked it over, like that Spider-Man pointing meme in real life. But the thing is, we all know where we were. Nana in her bed, Noah on the couch, me in my room. And none of that explains the phantom cat footsteps from earlier. Fast forward to that evening. My older sister, Marissa, comes over with her daughter, my 9-year-old niece, Ellie. If you're wondering why we're all flocking to Nana's house, it's because our grandfather passed away about 7 months before this, and Nana absolutely hates being alone. I'd already moved in with her. It's closer to my college, and, honestly, we just like being there. She really is a fun person to hang out with, for all her grumpiness about ghosts. That night, I let Marissa and Ellie use my bedroom, and I crash on the smaller love seat in the living room. Noah keeps his territory on the big couch. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I feel someone gently tapping my arm. I open my eyes, and it's Ellie, standing next to the love seat with that sleepy kid face. She whispers, "Your curtains fell." I blink at her. "My what?" "The curtains in your room," she says. "They fell down. You were already awake. You were just staring at them. Can you fix them?" Now I am exhausted. My brain is running at like 2 frames per second. So I say, "Why didn't you wake your mom?" Ellie looks confused. "Because you were already up. You were standing in the doorway." That snaps me awake a little more, and I tell her, "Ellie, I was asleep right here." I even pat the love seat and say, "I haven't gotten up at all." She insists, "No, you were. I saw you. You were just standing there, looking at the curtains." At this point, I'm too tired to unpack any of that, so I just go, "Okay, sure." I drag myself into the bedroom, and sure enough, the curtain rod above my window has come loose on one side and is sagging down. The fabric is half pooled on the floor. I fix it, tuck it back into place as best I can, and shuffle right back to the love seat. The next morning, I bring it up at breakfast. I ask my sister how she slept, and she's like, "Honestly, great. Best sleep I've had in a while." Ellie says she slept fine too, after I fixed the curtains. She sticks to her story though. She swears she saw me standing in the doorway, silently staring at the fallen curtains before she came to wake me. According to her, I looked weird, like I was tired or zoned out. For the record, we've got an all-electric house. No gas, no furnace, nothing like that. So we ruled out gas leaks or anything that might be messing with our heads. I've tried to explain it away in my own mind. Like, okay, maybe I'm so used to the cats walking in front of me that my brain filled in the blank and I imagined the feeling of pause. Maybe Nana, in her age, had some kind of half-awake dream, like sleep paralysis, and it felt real even though it wasn't. Oh, and the cats. That first night, I realized later they'd been hiding under my bed almost the entire time. Normally they're little night goblins, running around and knocking stuff over, but that night they were just under there, quiet. I have no idea why. Sometimes cats are just weird, but the timing felt off. The second night, I honestly don't know where they were. It is possible one of them could have messed with the curtains. They don't usually play with them, but I can't say they never would. Cats break their own rules constantly. So, I don't know. Maybe there's a perfectly logical explanation. Maybe it was all coincidence, weird timing, and jumpy nerves in a house that still feels a little empty without my grandfather. Or maybe, just for a couple of nights, something we couldn't see decided to walk around with us. Soft little steps across the floor, a poke at the end of a bed, a shadow in a doorway. I'm not saying it was a ghost. I'm just saying, I still don't have an explanation. So, let me tell you what happened the other day. I grew up in a very Catholic family, the kind that has holy water by the door, a rosary hanging from every bed, and a picture of some saint in every room. We're also, how do I say it, very superstitious. In my house, we believe in everything. The evil eye, souls that don't rest, noises that aren't from the wind. If something creaks, someone will immediately say, "Don't point at it, just pray." The house itself doesn't help. It's old and too big for just the 5 of us, my parents, my 2 brothers, and me. Long hallway, high ceilings, 3 guest rooms that are almost never opened. When I'm alone, the silence there doesn't feel empty. It feels like it's watching. And that day, I was alone. My parents had both gone out, my dad to his shift at the hospital, my mom to the store. My younger brother, Nico, had left early for his classes, and my older brother, Matteo, was supposed to be away on a work trip in another city. He wasn't due back until the following week. I only had 1 evening class at the time, starting around 7. So I was home, getting my things ready, scrolling my phone a bit, just normal day, you know? Quiet, kinda cozy. Until it wasn't. I was in my room, zipping up my backpack, when I heard a voice call me from the hallway. It was drawn out, kind of mocking. "Lucia." My name stretched out like a joke, and it was Matteo's voice. You know how your body recognizes a voice before your brain can argue with it? That's what happened. I froze. For a second, my first thought was, "Oh, he came back early," and I almost answered. I even opened my mouth to say, "What?" But then it hit me. He was not home. I had literally seen the family chat that morning, pictures of him in another city, sending selfies with a stupid hotel breakfast. There was no way he was in the hallway. The voice called again, softer this time, still with that teasing tone he always uses with me. "Lucia, come here." My whole body went cold, and instantly, a memory from years ago snapped back into my head. Something similar had happened when I was younger, maybe 7 or 8. Back then, my grandmother, we all called her Abuelita Cata, was still alive. I remember running to her, crying, because I'd heard someone call my name from the back patio, even though no one was there. She sat me down, made me hold her wrinkled hands, and she said in this calm voice, like she was explaining something completely normal, "When you hear a voice that sounds like someone you love, but you know it can't be them, that's not them, mijita. It's the devil. He likes to play. He likes to make fun. Don't answer him. Don't go where he calls you. Pretend you didn't hear." And then she made me pray a short prayer 3 times and spit lightly toward the floor, one of those little rituals grandmothers have. Standing there in my room years later, with Matteo's not Matteo voice in the hallway, I remembered her exactly. Her smell of coffee and ointment, the way her thumb stroked my knuckles when she spoke. So I did what she told me. I ignored it. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to keep moving. I put my headphones on, not even playing music, just over my ears, and focused on getting my stuff together. I told myself, "You're just nervous, you're alone, old house noises, that's all." That was weird. I always hang my keys on this tiny metal hook, shaped like a little house. Always. I have a routine. Keys, headphones, lip balm, out the door. It's automatic. But that hook was empty. I started checking the usual spots, my pockets, my desk, my nightstand. Nothing. At first it was just annoying, like, seriously? Right now? But after a few minutes of searching the same places over and over, that annoyance turned into a tight little knot in my chest. I finally found my keys in the front pocket of my backpack. The same backpack I had just zipped up. The same pocket I never use, because the zipper gets stuck. And yet, there they were, with the metal still cold, like they'd been hanging by the door a second ago. That's when that feeling hit me, the one that makes your shoulders tense and your back feel exposed. The feeling that something is just behind you. I actually stopped and turned around, staring at the quiet hallway. Nothing. The house was so still, it felt heavy. I took a breath and told myself out loud, "Okay, you're overreacting," and forced a little laugh, like I could scare the fear away with my own voice. I put the keys in my jeans pocket, grabbed my wallet from my desk, I remember this clearly, and dropped it into my bag. Then I went to the kitchen to drink some water before leaving. When I came back to grab my bag from my room, my wallet wasn't there. I thought maybe it had slipped out, so I checked the bed, the floor, the chair, under my notebook, inside the bag 3 times, even inside the pencil case for some reason. Nothing. I started getting frustrated, because now I was going to be late, and the house felt more and more like it was pressing in on me. I finally found my wallet on the kitchen counter. Not even hidden, just placed there. Open, with a couple of cards slightly out of their slots, like someone had been flipping through them and then got bored. To get from my room to the kitchen, you have to cross the living room and turn the corner by the stairs. It's not far, but it's not like my wallet could have just slipped out of my bag and flown over there. I just stood for a moment, staring at it. That little knot in my chest turned into a full-on chill that ran up my spine. At that point, I was done. I just wanted out. Go to class, be around people, be anywhere but in that house. I grabbed my wallet, shoved it into my bag, and headed for the door. I was going down the stairs a bit too fast, my heart racing ahead of me. I kept glancing at the framed pictures on the wall as I passed. My parents, my brothers, my grandmother in her Sunday dress. Their eyes seemed sharper. Don't ask me why. I know it was probably just my nerves, but it felt like they were watching. When I reached the front door and grabbed my bag to swing it over my shoulder, the strap suddenly snapped. Not slowly, not like it had been fraying for months. It just gave out with a loud pop, and everything spilled onto the floor. Keys, notebooks, pens, my wallet, my water bottle, all over the tiles. I jumped, half from the sound and half from the shock. I bent down, annoyed, muttering to myself while I picked everything up. And that's when it happened. As I was gathering my things, hunched over, I felt it. A breath. Right behind my left ear. Not a draft, not the cold air from the door. It was warm, human. The kind of breath you feel when someone leans in too close to whisper a secret. It brushed my hair and made the tiny hairs on my neck stand up. And with that breath, I heard a voice. Soft, but clear. So close it felt like it was inside my head and outside it at the same time. It was my grandmother's voice. Not an imitation, not a memory, not kind of like her. It was her voice. The same tone she used when waking me up for school, the same tenderness. She said, "While we die, no salgas." I froze. My hands stopped moving, a pen halfway between the floor and my bag. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I turned around so fast, I nearly slipped. There was nothing there, just the closed door, the empty hallway, the coat rack, the little table with the saint statue and the bowl of keys. No one behind me, no one on the stairs. And then, almost like they were answering to something I couldn't see, my dogs started howling in the backyard. They don't usually howl. They bark when people pass. They whine if they want food. But this was a long, mournful howl that made the glass in the back door vibrate a little. Both of them at the same time. That was it for me. I scooped my things up as best as I could with shaking hands, shoved them into the broken bag, and stepped back from the door. I didn't go out. I couldn't. Not after her voice. Not after that word. I texted my professor that I wasn't feeling well and wouldn't make it to class. Then I went upstairs, locked myself in my room, and put on the TV just for noise. I lit one of the little candles we keep for the Virgin and sat there on my bed, my broken bag on the floor, my heart slowly calming down. You know, a lot of people would say it was all just stress, or my imagination, or the creaking of an old house playing tricks on my mind. And maybe some of it was. But I know my brother's voice, and I know my grandmother's voice. And that word, Wawite. She hadn't called me that since I was a child. I hadn't even thought about it in years. So you can call it whatever you like, a warning, a coincidence, something dark teasing me, or something loving protecting me. All I know is that day, in that old house that believes in everything, I decided to listen to my grandmother. You know, there's one story that I think will stay with me for the rest of my life. A few years ago, my wife, Hannah, was looking after an elderly friend's mum in the last stage of her life. Hannah's worked in care for years, and this lady, her name was Grace, had advanced dementia. By then, she was completely nonverbal, bedbound, and needed round-the-clock care. Grace's family did everything they could during the week, but it was exhausting, and they wanted some professional help on the weekends to make sure she was as comfortable as possible. So, it was arranged that Hannah would stay at Grace's house from Friday afternoon until Sunday afternoon. I've known that family since I was a kid, so they were more than happy for me to stay over too, and for us to bring our little girl, who had just turned 2 at the time. Grace was set up downstairs in the lounge, and that basically became both her bedroom and the main care area. I knew the house really well because it was across the road from where my best mate used to live. I'd run in and out of that street as a kid, so the place always felt oddly familiar and safe to me. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms. As a family, we used the second double room, just me and our daughter, Emma. That was our room. Hannah split her nights between that room and a little fold-out camp bed downstairs next to Grace. She had alarms set every hour through the night to turn Grace, check her breathing, all those things you do to keep someone comfortable at the end. During the days, Emma would toddle around the house, curious about everything, asking questions in that very serious way toddlers do. She was fascinated by Grace. She'd ask, "Who is she?" And we'd explain gently that this was Nana Grace, our friend's mummy. Before long, Emma started calling her that on her own, Nana Grace. She'd wander in and out of the lounge, holding Hannah's hand, sometimes just quietly watching. There was something very calm about the way she was around Grace, as if she instinctively knew to be gentle. Now, Emma had explored pretty much every corner of that house. One morning, we went upstairs so I could get her dressed. We got to the top of the stairs, and she just stopped dead. She wouldn't cross the landing. At first, I thought she was just being silly or tired, But she kind of froze, and then her little face crumpled, and she started to cry. Proper, frightened crying, not a tantrum, not fussing. So I picked her up and said, "Hey, what's wrong? What's the matter, love?" And she clung to me and said, "I'm scared." I asked her, "What are you scared of?" She said, "It's scary up here. It's sad." That's the word she used, sad. Not dark, not monster, but sad. So I thought, all right, fair enough, she's only 2. I took her back downstairs, and as soon as we got to the bottom of the stairs, she calmed. She went back to toddling around, absolutely fine, like nothing had happened. That night, I didn't push it. I settled her on the sofa downstairs, got her to sleep there, then carried her up to bed once she was out cold. Kids are weird sometimes. You just roll with it. The next morning, after breakfast, we tried again. We went upstairs to get her dressed, and as soon as we reached the landing, same thing. She stopped, wouldn't move, and her eyes went straight to one particular door. It was the door to the small box room. I said, "What's scaring you?" She lifted her hand and pointed, very deliberately, at that door and whispered, "The scary door." So I said, "There's nothing scary about that door, sweetheart. Look, I'll show you." I opened it up. Inside was this little box room that Grace used to use for storage. There were a couple of old suitcases, some neatly folded clothes, a small bookshelf with dusty board games, and a wooden rocking chair that I remembered used to sit in the conservatory when I was younger. I stepped inside and turned back to Emma. "See? Nothing scary, just a room." But she refused to come in. She stayed well back on the landing, wouldn't even let her toes cross that threshold. And the look on her face, it wasn't drama. It was real, deep fear. Now, Emma has always been a really sunny, smiley little kid. Easygoing, doesn't spook easily. So by this point, I was starting to feel a bit, not scared exactly, but on edge. You know when you start to question yourself? Like, is there a draft? Is there a smell? Something I'm missing? So I asked her again, gently, "Why don't you like this room, love? What is it about the door?" She stared at the open doorway, very serious, and said just one word. "Died." That was it. Just died. I remember this little chill going right through me. I didn't want to frighten her even more, so I kept my voice light, said, "Okay, that's all right. We don't have to go in there." Shut the door, and took her back into our room to get her dressed. Over the next week and a half or so, every time we had to pass that door, she reacted the same way. She still wouldn't go near it. If we needed to go past, I'd either scoop her up or distract her, talking loudly and cheerfully about something else as we went across the landing. I wasn't terrified myself, but I was definitely unnerved, and I hated seeing her so frightened. We just tried to make those moments as quick and easy as possible. Then, one night, it happened. Grace passed away in her sleep, very peacefully, with Hannah and Grace's daughter, Sarah, next to her, holding her hand. It was quiet, gentle, exactly how you'd hope the end would be for someone you care about. We didn't tell Emma, obviously. She was 2. We didn't think she could really understand, and it felt like too much for her. That morning, I kept Emma upstairs as usual. I got her dressed, packed our little day bag, snacks, spare clothes, the usual toddler survival kit, and I planned to take her straight out of the house. My idea was, We'd go downstairs, straight past the lounge, and out the front door, so she wouldn't see anything or sense the atmosphere in the room. We came down the stairs, and just as we reached the bottom, Sarah came into the hallway. You could see she'd been crying, but she pulled herself together as soon as she saw Emma. Her face lit up, and she said, in the brightest voice she could manage, "Morning, sweetheart." And then something happened that I will never, ever forget. Emma suddenly let go of me, walked straight over to Sarah, took her hand, looked up at her, and said, perfectly calmly, "Nana Grace is with the angels now." Just like that. No prompt. No one had said anything to her. Grace had passed maybe 3 hours earlier. Emma and I had only been awake about half an hour. There's no way she overheard anything. We'd been upstairs the entire time. Sarah just broke. She started crying, but smiling at the same time, clutching Emma's tiny hand. There was this strange feeling in the hallway. Heavy, but also, I don't know, soft, kind. And here's the thing. We are not a particularly religious family. Both Hannah and I were baptized as kids, but we don't really go to church. We hadn't talked to Emma about heaven or angels or anything like that. The first time we ever took her into a church was about 8 months later for a wedding.
I think about it a lot, actually.
The weirdest part is, this thing with Emma didn't start there. When she was born, she didn't cry. Not even that first shocking wail you expect. She came out calm, eyes wide open, just looking around. Even on the ward later, surrounded by all these other babies screaming their lungs out, she just sort of lay there, peaceful, taking it all in. One of the older nurses came over to check on her, watched her for a bit, and then said to my wife, half smiling, "She's been here before, that one." And you know what? After everything that happened at Grace's house, the scary door, the word died, and then telling Sarah about the angels, I can't help but wonder. Maybe the nurse was right. Maybe she has been here before. Okay, so I know this is going to sound kind of out there, but I just need to tell someone who will actually listen for a second. My name's Mark, and my wife, her name's Lena, and I moved into this house about, 6 weeks ago. It's not some creepy old mansion or anything, just a regular single-story place built in the early 80s. Bit dated, weird beige tiles, wood paneling in the living room, that kind of vibe. But the price was good, the neighborhood is quiet, and we figured we'd fix it up over time. We've got a 4-year-old daughter, Emma. She's always been a really chatty kid, but lately her speech has just taken off. Full stories, full sentences, all of that. Anyway, maybe 2 weeks after we moved in, I start noticing this little routine she has. She'll wander out of her bedroom and just stand in the hallway, right in this specific spot between her door and the bathroom. And she'll just talk. Not yelling or playing, just this calm, soft conversation. At first I'm thinking, cool, imaginary friend phase, totally normal. I had one as a kid, no big deal. But after a few days, I realize she always stands in exactly the same place. Like, she'll shuffle her feet until she's lined up with this little crack in the hallway baseboard. Then she faces the wall and starts chatting. One afternoon, Lena asks her, real casual, "Hey Em, who are you talking to, honey?" And without missing a beat, Emma says, "The man in the wall." We kind of laugh. You know that nervous laugh you do when something is weird, but you don't want to make it a big deal? I'm like, "Oh yeah? What's his name?" And she just shrugs and goes, He doesn't remember. And then she's off, back to her toys. So we brush it off. Kids are weird. Brains are creative. No reason to freak out, right? Fast forward to a few nights ago. It's around 1:30 in the morning. I wake up thirsty, can't get back to sleep, so I head to the kitchen for some water. The house is dark and quiet. You know that middle of the night quiet where every little sound feels bigger? As I walk past Emma's room into the hallway, I hear this sound. At first, I think it's the fridge or the AC kicking on, something like that. But it's not. It's this low humming, not mechanical, not like a fan or wires buzzing, more like someone humming a tune under their breath. No words, just this soft melody. I stop in my tracks because it feels like it's coming from right where Emma always stands. So I step into that exact spot, and I swear, the humming gets clearer. Not louder, exactly, just sharper, like I'm suddenly in the right place to hear it properly. I'm half asleep, so I'm trying to be rational. I press my ear against the wall, expecting to hear pipes or maybe the neighbor's TV or something. But it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound through the wall. It sounds like it's in the wall. Like there's space in there, and someone is on the other side of it. I stand there for a solid minute, just listening. The tune kind of loops, like a lullaby someone forgot half the notes to. And then, slowly, it fades out. Not abruptly, just like whoever it was decided to stop. So now I'm wide awake. Next day, I go into full dad investigation mode. I grab a flashlight and check the attic above that hallway. There's nothing there. No loose wires, no busted vents, no weird old speaker system, nothing. I tap along the drywall, check for hollow spots, look for a vent I somehow missed. All normal. I don't tell Emma any of this, obviously. She's 4. Last thing I want is to freak her out or give her nightmares. Honestly, I don't even tell Lena that night, because I'm still trying to convince myself I just imagined it. Middle of the night brain, right? Yesterday morning, though, I'm in the kitchen making coffee, and I hear Emma talking in the hallway again. Lena's with her, helping her get dressed, and they come into the kitchen together. Emma's totally unbothered, just nibbling on a piece of toast, hair sticking up everywhere like usual. Lena looks at me, kind of half smiling but with that worried crease between her eyebrows, and says, "So, Emma was chatting with her friend again." I play along. "Yeah? What's he saying today?" Emma looks at me, all serious, and goes, "He said Daddy can hear him now too." And that stops me cold, because we have not told her anything. I didn't mention the humming to her, or to Lena, or to anyone. I've just been walking around with it in my head, trying to talk myself out of it. I try to keep my face neutral and say, "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She just shrugs, like it's the most obvious thing in the world, and says, "He said you stood in his spot." His spot. That same little stretch of hallway she always stands in. And then she starts humming. And I swear to you, it is the same weird little tune I heard in the middle of the night. Same rhythm, same kind of looping pattern. She hums a few bars, then stops and asks if she can have more juice like nothing happened. I finally tell Lena everything after Emma goes down for a nap. The humming, the wall, the attic, all of it. I'm expecting her to laugh it off, but she doesn't. She just gets really quiet and says, "Maybe we should have someone check the wall, just to be sure it's not, I don't know, animals or something." And here's the thing. That makes sense. That's the normal, responsible adult thing to do. Call someone, get it inspected, rule out mice or raccoons or some old wiring hidden where it shouldn't be. But I'm stuck on this feeling I can't quite shake. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't go around looking for ghosts in old houses. 99 times out of 100, I'm the guy saying, there's a logical explanation, just calm down. But this one is getting under my skin. Because if we open that wall and find something, some weird old speaker, a weird crawl space, whatever, then okay, we deal with it, we move on. But if we open that wall and there's nothing, no pipes, no speakers, no nests, no reason for humming at all, then what? Which one is worse? So that's where I'm at right now. Just a tired dad in a slightly ugly 80s hallway, pretending I'm not listening for a song that shouldn't be there. I don't know what we'll end up doing. Maybe we get the wall checked. Maybe we move Emma's room. Maybe I start sleeping with a podcast on so I don't hear anything at 1:30 in the morning. I just needed to say it out loud to someone. Because my little girl is standing in the hallway, talking to a man in the wall, and apparently, he knows I'm listening now too. So let me tell you about something that happened a little while ago. It was a cool, overcast afternoon, and I was out walking with my friend Maya in this stretch of woods we both love. You know the kind of place. Soft pine needles underfoot, that damp, earthy smell, dappled light filtering through the branches. We were just chatting, not doing anything special, when Maya pointed down this narrow side path I'd never noticed before. "Hey," she said, "I want to show you something weird." The moment we turned onto that path, everything in me changed. It was like walking into a wall of heaviness. My chest tightened, my heart felt constricted, and my stomach did this slow, uneasy twist. I didn't say anything at first, but then Maya looked at me and went, "You feel that too, right?" I just nodded. The air was thick, and it felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. We followed the path until the trees opened up, and there it was, an old, sagging, 2-story house at the end of the clearing. It was more of a weather-beaten farmhouse than anything. Peeling white paint, a porch with missing boards, roof half collapsed on one side. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. There were no trespassing signs nailed haphazardly to the trees and fence posts, some of them half fallen, some shot through with rusted nails. The windows were boarded up, planks crisscrossed like someone had tried really hard to keep the inside from getting out, or the outside from getting in. Maya led me around the back, where, bizarrely, there was a glass sliding door that was almost completely intact. Just this one clean portal looking into chaos. Through that glass, I could see the living room. The place was torn apart. The old couch had been shredded, probably by animals, foam guts spilling everywhere. There were broken picture frames on the floor, some warped vinyl records curled up with mold, and pieces of furniture just slumped like they'd given up. Everything felt soggy, stale, forgotten. I stood there, a couple of feet from the glass, and just let myself feel it. The energy was thick and suffocating. It pressed on my chest, made my throat feel tight. If you'd walked down that pine path without knowing a single thing about energy or spirits, you still would have known something was off. It was too quiet. No birds, no bugs humming, no wind rustling leaves. Just this heavy, watching silence. Whatever was in that house was powerful, unsettling. But as intense as it was, it didn't feel demonic to me. Maya had brought me there because she knows what I do. I'm a sensitive, a medium. I connect with people who've passed. I feel and translate energies, and I help move things. Spirits, attachments, old emotions, when they're stuck. I also clear out darker stuff when it shows up. People in the area had started calling this place cursed. I'd heard stories that it was demonic, that anyone who messed with it would get sick, that even the government had bought the property and then just left it to rot because it was too far gone. No one wanted to touch it. It was the kind of house kids dare each other to run up to on Halloween. So I stood there with all those stories in my head and this pressure in my chest, and I let myself drop into my channeling state. Almost immediately, I connected with a man. He felt like he was in his late 60s. I'll call him Leonard. The sense I got was that he died suddenly. A burst, a rupture, something like an aneurysm or a stroke. Very fast and very confusing. 1 minute there, the next minute, not. But he didn't know he was not. What really hit me, though, was his fear. This man was absolutely terrified of death. In his final moments, there was this surge of, no, 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 not yet. This refusal, this desperate clenching onto life. That terror was so strong that when his body gave out, his spirit just refused to move on. He latched onto the house instead, the way you might grab a door frame if someone was trying to drag you out. As I stayed with his energy, I started picking up more details. He'd had 3 daughters. I could feel his love for them like this ache running through his whole being. They were his world. The thought of leaving them, of not knowing where they'd go, what would happen to them, was unbearable to him. In his mind, crossing over meant losing them forever. So he made a choice, in that panicked, confused, in-between state. He stayed. He stayed in the only place he recognized, this house. The tragedy was that time moved on for everyone else. His daughters grew up, left, built lives. The house got sold, abandoned, boarded up. And he was still inside, stuck, watching it decay around him, certain that if he left, he'd never find them again. All of that terror, sorrow, and overwhelm was soaking into the walls. That's the bad vibe everyone felt. So I stood there behind that glass door, took a slow breath, and gently reached deeper into his emotions. The fear, the denial, the loneliness, the grief. I started doing the work, unwinding, softening, acknowledging. I spoke to him, spirit to spirit, something like, "You're not really in this house anymore. You don't have to guard it. The people you love are not here, and you won't lose them by moving on. They're held. You're allowed to rest now. You won't be punished. You won't be abandoned. There is more than this." I could feel him resisting at first, clinging to that old belief that if you let go, everything would disappear. But as I kept holding space, the fear started to loosen. It was like talking to someone who's been holding their breath for years and finally realizes they're allowed to exhale. The work itself only took a few minutes in our time, but inside that energetic space, it felt much longer, like we were standing on the threshold together, sorting through decades of fear. And then, suddenly, I felt it. There was a sharp, clear, snap sensation in my chest, almost like a cord breaking cleanly, and an immediate lightness washed through my body. I let out this huge sigh I hadn't realized I was holding, and shook out my arms, my legs, like I needed to redistribute all the energy that had just shifted. In that moment, as I glanced back through the glass, I got a brief, vivid impression of him. Leonard. Older man, kind eyes. He lifted his hand, gave me this small, almost shy thumbs up. A little, "thank you," before he faded out. Right after that, my whole body was buzzing, like when you step off one of those intense massage chairs and your muscles are tingling and awake, almost too alive. I turned to Maya, and she just stared at me with wide eyes and said, "I feel weird, like high." Did you feel that? She could tell something big had shifted. The heaviness that had been suffocating when we arrived, it was just gone. The air felt clearer, easier to breathe. And then, as if on cue, a bird shrieked loudly from the branches above us, and we both jumped and laughed. It was the first bird we'd heard the entire time we were there. The forest started to sound like a forest again. Leaves rustling, a couple more birds calling in the distance. The world slowly turning its volume back up.
Here's the thing I really want you to hear.
That house was never truly demonic. It was just saturated with one man's unresolved terror and grief. His energy was so dense and so afraid that anyone walking nearby would naturally feel unsafe and spooked. It felt dark, but at its core, it was sorrowful, not evil. That doesn't mean there aren't genuinely nasty entities or very heavy, hostile energies in some places. I've worked with those, and they can be extremely intense. But in my experience, most of what people call hauntings or curses are actually spirits or imprints weighed down by emotional baggage and fear, especially around death. Most heavy energies aren't out to get us. They're stuck. They're hurting. When we understand that, we stop seeing every eerie place as some untouchable, malevolent force, and instead we can approach it with a mix of respect, boundaries, and compassion. We can help clear, soften, and reclaim spaces that would otherwise be left to rot just because people are scared of what they don't understand. And, for what it's worth, even if we humans abandon these places, the land doesn't. The trees, moss, animals, they move in. They wrap themselves around the broken beams and cracked foundations. Life keeps growing over what we label cursed. But it feels good when a place and a spirit gets a second chance to breathe again.